Chapter 678. The Golden Bell Platform and the 5-string hall were the cultivation grounds of the previous sect leaders. The grass and trees in front of the hall were evergreen all year round, and the ground was covered with beautiful flowers and jade-like grasses. In the back garden, the sea of clouds billowed in the blue sky, and the sound of the tide could be heard continuously. There was a flying pleasure boat moored in the blue sky. The boat was 3,000 zhang long, and it was 5 stories high. It had a garden pavilion, a long corridor, and a golden bridge. The winding path led into a secluded place. Beautiful bamboos, lonely cattail leaves, strange rocks, and old pines decorated the place. Inside the main building of the floating boat, Du Shixuan was bowing to a woman with a head full of pearls and jade. He said, "Greetings, mother." This woman was Madame Zhao, sect leader Qiao's Taoist companion, and also Du Shixuan's birth mother. She looked to be in her 30s, her skin was white and smooth, her skin was round like pearls, and her eyebrows were full of charm. At this moment, she was reclining on the couch, wearing a wide-sleeved robe and a light muslin covering her body, revealing a section of her snow-white arms. She said with a slight languid tone, "My son has returned. Have you seen your father?" Du Shixuan stood up and replied respectfully, "I have just returned from the banquet and have seen my father." Madame Zhao seemed to have thought of something. She sighed and said, "Recently, your father has been worrying a lot about the Dragon Pillar gathering. He is obviously an accomplished cultivator, but his hair is covered with white frost. In the future, you must help him more." Du Shixuan scoffed, "The elders in the sect are all useless. If it wasn't for their stubbornness and rejection of other sects' techniques, I, Zhongtai, wouldn't be suppressed by Xianyu. Ever since the founding of Zhongtai sect, the Grand Master Demi, the sect has used the secret records of the compounding principles as its main technique. However, after thousands of years, no one was able to cultivate to the point of ascension. After sect leader Qiao took over as the sect leader, he felt that Zhongtai sect's techniques were incomplete and had many flaws. Therefore, he wanted to take the strengths of other sects to make up for it. However, the group of elders led by Elder Yan still held on to the original techniques. They believed that there must be a reason behind the Grand Master's techniques. As long as they took the half of the book from Xianyu sect, they would have the hope of achieving Tao. Afraid that there would be internal strife within the sect, sect leader Qiao could only put this matter aside for the time being. But who would have thought that the Xianyu sect was ahead of Zhongtai? In the recent hundreds of years, this sect had learned from the strong points of others and had almost completely revised the 3 Guanghui important techniques, discarding many of the flaws. That was why people like Rong Juanzhong had appeared. Fortunately, sect leader Qiao had foreseen this and secretly sent some talented disciples to other places to practice the superior skills that the previous sect leaders had collected from other continents. However, this skill could not be shown to the public after all, and there were also the sect elders who interfered. Du Shixuan was the only one who had truly succeeded in his cultivation over the past several hundred years. After being defeated twice in the Dragon Pillar duels, Elder Yan had no choice but to take a step back. He believed that he could ask someone from the other faction to be of use to him, but he still refused to budge on the matter of making up for the missing parts of the cultivation method. Du Shixuan's actions just now in the hall were precisely to ruthlessly humiliate them. While the mother and son were talking, footsteps could be heard as a maidservant came in. She stole a glance at Du Shixuan and then placed a jade plate on the table. She bent her knees and said, "Madam, I just now picked the red fruits." There were about a dozen of them, piled up in the shape of a pagoda, and each one was red and juicy. Madame Zhao picked one up and placed it in her mouth. Feeling the sweet juice flowing between her teeth, she could not help but let out a soft moan. She then said, "My son, this fruit was planted by someone from the South Cliff continent. It can nourish one's inner qi and cleanse one's blood. Since you are training your strength, it will be good for you to eat more. Why don't you try it?" Du Shixuan said, "Thank you, madam." He did not have the habit of tasting the fruits carefully. His abdomen swelled up, and white smoke came out of nowhere, sucking the fruits into his mouth. Madame Zhao chuckled and sat up straight on the couch. She asked, since you have returned from the banquet, did you see any outstanding cultivators among the cultivators that you invited? Du Shixuan said with disdain, they are all loose cultivators. They are not even comparable to the elders of my sect. Madame Zhao was not surprised by this result. In the Dongxing continent, the techniques practiced by the cultivators of the 5 big sects were the best. Other than the Shaotsang realm, which could be compared, the other sects were far inferior. She pondered for a while and then said, those people are only used to boost our reputation. Against Xianyu, we still need to rely on our Zhongtai disciples. The rest cannot be trusted. Du Shixuan heard this and said, even the Fengxiang sword school cannot be trusted. Madame Zhao graduated from the Fengxiang sword school. She was not sect leader Qiao's first wife. The reason why she could become the sect leader's wife was because of this. Madame Zhao looked into his eyes and said seriously, that's right. The Fengxiang sword school cannot be trusted either. Do you really think they are here to help me? She had a cold smile on her face and said, they are afraid that our 2 sects will unite and make up for the deficiencies in our techniques. They want Zhongtai and Xianyu to suffer great losses and finally perish like the 3 evil sections. But if Zhongtai dies, how can we, mother and son, go to live? At this point, she changed her tone and said, however, although we cannot completely trust them, we cannot completely abandon them either. For example, the people that were invited to the banquet. Although they were invited because of Elder Yan, they were originally from different places. As long as Yinghong is still the sect leader, we can use them for our own purposes. Sun, you have to pay attention. If there are any outstanding people among them, you can rope them in as soon as possible so that they can be of help to your father. Du Shixuan seemed to understand and nodded, I understand. Madame Zhao leaned back and said, this time, Rong Juanzhong is an obstacle in the way of the gathering of the dragon pillars. Only by getting rid of this person, Zhongtai will have a chance of winning. Du Shixuan said confidently, Mother, the last 2 times I was not around, I allowed Rong Juanzhong to be so arrogant. Now that I am back, there is no need to be afraid. Madame Zhao nodded her head and her eyes were bright. She said, good, good. With my son's help, your father will be able to sleep peacefully. At this moment, a servant girl carefully walked over to her side and said softly, Madam, Taoist Hui Xian is here. Madame Zhao's beautiful eyes brightened and said, invite him in. After a short while, a figure flashed outside and in came a Daoran wearing a crane cloak, thin lips and hawk-like eyes. This person had deep lines on his forehead, thin straight eyebrows and sideburns. But his figure was illusory and there was a cloud under his feet. It was obvious that he was the Yuanying Dharmakaya. After entering the hall, he took a look and said, is Sun here too? Du Shixuan did not dare to be careless in front of this Daoran. He kept his sharp aura and closed fists saluted, greetings, uncle. Elder Hui Xian made a sound of acknowledgement and said, that's just nice. I was just looking for you. Du Shixuan said, does uncle have any instructions? Madame Zhao smiled and said, why don't Jinren sit down and talk? Elder Hui Xian nodded his head and sat down at the guest seat. He then said, Sun, do you have any intention to take over the position of the next leader? He asked so straightforwardly, not only was Madame Zhao stunned, even Du Shixuan was bewildered and asked hesitantly, what does uncle mean? Elder Hui Xian smiled faintly and said, you don't have to reply me. I only want to tell you that after the previous 2 Dragon Pillar meetings, Zhongtai's vitality has been greatly damaged. Even if it uses 100 years, it may not be able to recover to its former state. In the future, it will definitely need to rely heavily on cultivators from outside the sect or from the lower sections. If you are interested, then you need to fight for the person in charge of the contract so that you can use those who are useful. Madame Zhao frowned and said, that matter has always been handled by Elder Yan. If Sun interferes, will it make him unhappy? 3 months later would be after the Dragon Pillars. Just that in order to prevent those cultivators from outside the sect from contributing, Zhongtai needs to sign the contract beforehand so that they can fight to the death with Xianyu. Elder Hui Xian blushed and said, "What time is it already? This is the last dragon pillar battle. If we lose again, Xian, you will not be far from swallowing Zhongtai. And in the sect, only Sun, and that Rong Juanzhong have the ability to fight. Therefore we should fight and do not have to worry about other things." Madame Zhao looked at Elder Hui Xian with some resentment and lightly flicked her sleeves and said, "If brother-in-law is willing to help, why would it be like this?" Elder Hui Xian said in a deep voice, "This time I will also follow sect leader." He was originally a rogue cultivator, and because of his exceptional aptitude, he had once received pointers from Zhongtai Cave Jinren Weixing, therefore his achievements were extremely high. A few hundred years ago, he had already cultivated to the 3rd stage of Yuanying and was the most hopeful person in the continent to step into Grotto Heaven realm. However, he was after all not a disciple of Zhongtai and did not go for the previous 2 battles. But this time there was no such restriction, therefore he decided to go. When Madame Zhao heard that he was willing to go this time, her beautiful eyes widened and said in surprise, "With brother-in-law helping out, merely Rong Juanzhong, I think it will be easy." But Elder Hui Xian shook his head and said, "Against this person, my chances of winning are not high." Madame Zhao could not help but be surprised. From what she saw, Rong Juanzhong had only reached the 3rd stage of Yuanying for a few decades, while Elder Hui Xian had hundreds of more years of cultivation, so it should be easy to deal with him. Why did he seem to be very fearful of this person now? Elder Hui Xian waved his hand and said, "It is inconvenient to say the reason for this matter, we can talk about it later. I have another important matter today, which is to introduce someone to Madame and Sun'er." After speaking, he flicked his sleeves and a puff of white smoke came out. After landing on the ground, it turned into a tall and burly cultivator with a thick beard and a wide face. The light in Du Shishuan's eyes brightened, his fists clenched tightly and he shouted sternly, "Who are you?" If there was any abnormality in this person, he would not care who brought him and would first kill him with a punch. Madame Zhao's brows were tightly knitted. This was her inner chamber, and this Hui Xian actually did not inform her and brought an outsider in, which made her slightly unhappy. Elder Hui Xian said in a deep voice, "Both of you do not panic, this friend's identity is hindered and it is inconvenient for him to enter and exit this room. There are also elders watching outside, so I had no choice but to make the decision on my own and bring him in." The cultivator laughed and cupped his hands, "I am Luo Dongchuan, greet Madame Zhao." He then bowed to Du Shishuan and said, "Friend Du is too polite." When Madame Zhao heard his name, she was shocked and unconsciously stood up and pointed, "You are from Beima Hai Jia, that place." Luo Dongchuan chuckled and said, "Madame's guess is not wrong. I am from Luo family and the clan leader, Luo Jiangyu, is my clan brother. Today I am here because of friend Hui Xian's invitation and for the big plan of our 2 families. Chapter 679. 3 months later, Zhongtai's sect gathered the cultivators on the golden platform to discuss the signing of the contract. This time, sect leader Qiao did not show up and handed the matter over to Grand Elder Yan Qinghui. This elder was of high seniority and was the leader of all the elders in the sect. As soon as the hour of dawn passed, Zhang Yan rode on a ray of light from the guest house and arrived at the scene. He stooped down and saw incense burning on a table with green smoke rising in spirals. 2 Daoist children were standing on the platform, one holding a bell and the other a sword. Underneath the altar were several dozen praying mats, on which a dozen or so people were already sitting. Because there were no restrictive spells covering the altar today, with so many nascent soul cultivators gathered together, spiritual light shot out, illuminating more than 10 li away. Astral winds spiraled up to the horizon, so strong that it was difficult to gather, revealing a clear blue sky. At this moment, one of the Taoists raised his head and stood up. He bowed to him and said with a smile, "Daoist Zhang is here too." He looked behind him and said in surprise, "Why don't I see Daoist Tang and Daoist Song?" Zhang Yan recognized this person as Qin Shogu, who visited the pavilion a few times. He returned the greeting and said with a smile, "So it's Daoist Qin." After thinking about it, the 3 of them thought that they didn't have much confidence in this battle and didn't want to come. The Dragon Pillar battle was extremely dangerous, and once the contract was signed, there was no turning back. He came for the spiritual medicine so he didn't have to worry. However, the three of them were considered to be members of the Deep Abyss sect and they didn't have to fight for Zhongtai sect. Instead, they would be working for someone else. Chen Shogu had a look of pity on his face and said, "What a pity. I heard that the rewards this time are generous. If we miss this opportunity, we won't have another one like this in the future." Zhang Yan smiled and didn't say anything. The two of them chatted for a while more and then sat down. After a while, the cultivators arrived one after another. A month ago, Zhongtai had already sent a contract with all sorts of rules. Those who were unwilling to sign the contract would have to leave immediately. Those who didn't want to sign the contract had left long ago. Zhang Yan looked around. Although there were close to 50 people at the banquet, there were only about 20 people here, less than half of the previous ones. At this time, the bell rang and a strong wind suddenly rose. 3 rays of spiritual light flew out from the mountain and landed on the Dharma throne in the hall. 3 Taoists with bright clothes and high buns appeared. Chen Shou secretly transmitted his voice to him, "Fellow Taoist, please take a look. That person in the middle is Elder Yen. He's a senior with great authority." Rumor has it that even sect leader Qiao sometimes had to look at his face. He could make decisions with just a word. The one on the left was Elder Lin, who could not be underestimated. The one on the right was Elder Bai, who had shown up at the banquet. "Of course you do." Zhang Yan looked up and saw a kind-looking man in the middle. He had the body of a tortoise and the bones of a crane, and spiritual energy lingered around him. The 3 masses of strong clouds stretched out from the top, like a spring hitting metal and stone. It was empty and deep in the valley, causing one to feel as if they could hear strands of elegant sounds. In terms of cultivation, he was only slightly weaker than sect leader Qiao on the surface. After Elder Yen sat down, he looked at the crowd and said in a gentle voice, "Fellow Taoists, thank you for coming from afar to help Zhongtai. However, there are rules in our sect that cannot be easily violated. Today, I will make a contract with all of you. If you are willing, then stay. If not, then leave. I will not force you." He waved his sleeves and more than 20 rays of spiritual light flew down. Zhang Yan raised his hand to receive it and put it in front of him. What he saw was a shiny jade tablet with dozens of lines of words carved on it. He looked at them one by one. The content was different from the contract from before. It said that after the battle, if one retreated without reason or was timid in the face of the enemy, Zhongtai had the right to deal with them. Once the contract was signed, there was no going back. He looked down and saw that Zhongtai had promised rewards. This was something that had not been there before. He couldn't help but look carefully. At this moment, the cultivators also saw this. Perhaps they were excited. Someone read out loud, "Kill a Xianyue Yuanying cultivator. Other than the list of gifts, you will be rewarded with a good robe and 3 Jintai Qi replenishing pills. Kill a Xianyue elder. You will be given control of a celestial city. Kill Rong Juanzhong. Sect Master Qiao is willing to become sworn brothers with him. 3 cities will be given as a gift. No offerings, no summons, and all disciples will be protected by Zhongtai." At this point, a few gasps came from the crowd. The rewards were very generous. Even though they were all Yuanying cultivators, they were still tempted. Someone on the side mumbled, "Does Zhongtai have so many celestial cities?" Chen Shogu chuckled and said, "If we can get rid of the Xianyue elder, when the 2 sects become one, we won't have to worry about not having celestial cities." As soon as he said this, a few people made up their minds. They forced out a drop of blood and quickly signed the contract. Zhang Yan sneered. The Zhongtai and Xianyu sects might have been considering the fact that they were from the same sect, but from the looks of the rewards, it was clear that they were at each other's throats. They had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. However, if he could obtain a few more immortal cities, he wouldn't refuse them. He inserted a strand of spiritual qi into it, and in an instant, the 3 spirit medicines he needed appeared on it. He couldn't help but nod to himself. The fact that these 3 items appeared on the jade deed meant that the Zhongtai estate's treasury did indeed have these items. Thereupon, without any hesitation, he forced a drop of blood from his fingertip onto the jade tablet. The jade tablet trembled slightly. Kacha. It split into 2 halves. One half flew toward the 3 elders' hands, while the other half remained in his hand. On the other side of the stage, Elder Lin saw that the situation was under his control. He couldn't help but smile. He bowed to Elder Yen beside him and said, "Senior brother, I've prepared the order of the battle. Would you like to take a look?" Elder Yen nodded and said, "I'd like to take a look." Elder Lin took out a jade scroll from his sleeve and presented it to Elder Yen. When Elder Yen opened it, he pointed to the side and said, "Senior brother, please take a look. Based on what Senior brother has said, I have ordered people to test the names of those who are willing to sign the contract. There are a total of 5 people who have a grudge against me and refuse to comply. I used a red pen to mark out their names." Elder Yen grunted and immediately made a judgment: they are arrogant and can't be used. Elder Lin tried to sound him out, then, Elder Yen waved the jade scroll in his hand and said, "Didn't you want to find someone capable to wear down Rong Juanzhong's arrogance? Let's choose this person." Elder Lin Daoren said, "Yes." After a while, the 20 Yuanying cultivators had all signed the contract. The contract jade flew to the front of the table. Elder Yen counted and saw that there was not a single one missing. He was not satisfied. The sect suffered heavy casualties the last 2 times, but with these people, the cultivators of the Zhongtai sect didn't need to risk their lives to fight on the front lines, thus preserving their vitality. As for the lives of these people, he didn't care. Suddenly, there was a loud noise in the sky. He looked up and saw a flame flying towards him. He squinted his eyes. Elder Lin was shocked and said, "Why is that Do kid here too?" The firelight didn't seem to care about anything else as it flew straight towards where the 3 of them were sitting. Elder Yen frowned and had no choice but to get up to avoid it. With a loud boom, the firelight smashed onto the stage and then dispersed outwards. Du Shixuan walked out of the fire. His eyes were shining. He first glanced at the people below the stage, then turned to the 3 elders and cupped his hands. Elder Yen was well-mannered and acted as if nothing had happened. He said with a smile, "Why are you here, junior leader?" Du Shixuan said loudly, "I was ordered by my father to host the contract signing meeting with all the elders." Elder Yan's expression didn't change. He asked, "Do you have proof?" Du Shixuan didn't say much. He took out a dark green jade talisman and flashed it in his hand. "This is the sect leader's token." Seeing that the other party came prepared, Elder Yen didn't say much. He chuckled and gestured with his hand. "Since it is the sect leader's order, we will naturally follow it. Junior leader, please take the main seat." Du Shixuan didn't stand on ceremony. He went to the main seat and sat down. The 3 elders had to retreat to the side. Elder Lin was indignant. He said, "It was already agreed that we would host it. I didn't expect this kid to interfere. Damn it." Elder Yen stroked his beard and said, "Although the sect leader is sometimes radical in his actions, he always has a plan. He has never gone back on his words. There must be a reason for this jade talisman." Elder Lin thought about it and said angrily, "It must be the Zhao family. If they want to snatch him away from us, I will report this to the sect leader." Elder Yen shook his head. The sect leader still needs this kid to deal with Rong Juanzhong. He will definitely protect him. Even if you question him, he will only admit it. But so what if he is involved in today's matter? He killed 2 people in a row at the banquet and was merciless with his words. Let's see how many people are willing to go with him. Du Shixuan had been cultivating outside the sect for a long time. He didn't have any foundation in the sect. After listening to Madame Zhao's advice, he decided to pick a few cultivators from the crowd and recruit them as his subordinates. They would be the foundation of the sect and the Chu country in the future. But he called a few people up, but they all failed. The cultivators were afraid of his cruel actions that day and didn't dare to agree. The three elders sneered as they watched from the side. Elder Lin mocked, indeed, senior brother was right. Du Shixuan busied himself for half a day but no one was willing. He was annoyed, but when he turned his head around he saw Zhang Yan sitting calmly below the stage. His eyes lit up and he leaped down from his seat. Jinren, he said, you know why I am here, are you willing? Zhang Yan couldn't help but find it funny. This Du Shixuan clearly didn't know how to treat others, and his words were blunt. No wonder no one was willing to submit to him. However, this person was proud and arrogant, and his conduct was straightforward. Compared to those treacherous elders, he was much easier to get along with. Zhang Yan might even be able to obtain more benefits from him, so he smiled and said, since fellow Taoist Du has sincerely invited me, this humble Taoist shall accept. Du Shixuan was overjoyed. Zhang Yan was a cultivator of the second level of Yuanying. He was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Even though he wasn't famous, his cultivation was still there. Du Shixuan said, as long as you help me defeat Rong Juanzhong, I will not mistreat you. Yan Changfeng Daoren asked, who is that? Elder Bai took the deed jade and glanced at it. He said, the things this person asked for are mostly used by cultivators of the evil sections. Yan Changfeng Daoren said, so he is a remnant of the evil sections. Yan Changfeng Daoren said, no matter where he came from, he signed the contract. Since he is willing to follow Du Shixuan, let him be. Du Shixuan returned to the altar and remembered Madame Zhao's warning. He said, I heard that the elders have come up with the battle order. Show it to me. Elder Yan thought for a while and gestured to Elder Lin. Elder Lin had no choice but to pass the jade to Du Shixuan. Du Shixuan took it and looked at it. He saw that among the people fighting against Rong Juanzhong, Zhang Yan's name was there. He couldn't help but sneer. If it was before, he wouldn't have cared. However, this person was the first cultivator he had recruited with his own abilities. How could he allow these old men to manipulate him? He grabbed a pen from the table and crossed out Zhang Yan's name. Then, he casually circled another person's name and tossed it to Elder Yan. He said, in my opinion, this should be the arrangement. Elder Lin was furious. He slammed the table and stood up. This was decided before. How can it be changed? Chapter 680. After the contract signing ceremony was over, in order to win Zhang Yan's favor, Du Shixuan dragged him to his immortal's cave for a drink. Before parting, he gave Zhang Yan a lot of medicinal pills and magical tools, and personally escorted him out of the mansion. Zhang Yan rode the wind and traveled down Hope Sound Mountain. Suddenly, a ray of light flew in front of him and stopped not far from him. He took a look and saw that it was Qin Shogu, Taoist Qin. He couldn't help but smile, Taoist Qin, why haven't you left yet? Qin Shogu looked around and said in a low voice, Jinren Zhang, can I have a word with you? Zhang Yan pondered for a while, then nodded. The two flew away on the ray of light, and not long after, they landed on a hill outside the capital of Chu. After stopping, Qin Shogu sighed, Taoist Qin, you're muddle-headed. Why did you go to Du Shixuan's side? He's a violent person, and there are rumors that he's on bad terms with the elders of Zhongtai. I'm afraid you'll get into trouble if you keep contact with him. Zhang Yan glanced at him and said with a smile, fellow Taoist Qin, which elder asked you to come here? Seeing that he had been seen through, Qin Shogu didn't hide it anymore, and simply said, to be honest, I came here on the request of Elder Bai. I know that you had a bad impression of Elder Lin because of the gift list, but after Elder Bai found out about it, he ordered the ceremony officer to punish him severely. After some investigation, he found out about what Jinren Zhang did on Mount Xinwu. He felt that he had missed out on a great talent, so he asked me to come down and talk to you. How could Zhang Yan not know the other party's intentions? Trying to rope him in was just a facade, trying to attack Du Shixuan's true intentions. If Zhang Yan, who had just been recruited in name, ended up joining a group of elders, Du Shixuan would really become a laughing stock. He smiled and said, I will go back and think about this. Qin Shogu said cheerfully, okay, if you change your mind, you can come find me anytime. Hope Sound Mountain Guest House. Zhang Boyan sat in the pill room, flipping through 2 books in his hands expressionlessly. These were the ancient Taoist books that Song Chuyuan had given to him in order to curry favor with him. When one's cultivation had reached his level, and he had the proper inheritance, there was naturally no need for him to put in the effort to learn the techniques of other sections. It was only easy for him to learn the divine abilities and techniques. He would not complain about having too many of them. In these 2 books, there was a small divine ability that was acceptable. Although its power was not obvious, it was easy to cultivate. It also had the ability to confuse the enemy, and it was quite compatible with his own path. He planned to take advantage of the time of the Dragon Pillar gathering to cultivate this technique. Just as he was deep in thought, a maid came in. Wan Fu said, "Priest Zhang, there's someone outside the garden asking to see you. He says he's an old friend." "Old acquaintances?" Zhang Boyan put down the book. A faint green light flickered in his eyes as he asked warily, "Did that person say his name?" The maid said, "No, he only said he wants to see Zhang Boyan, Jinren." Since Qin Wentian already knew his name, Zhang Boyan didn't bother guessing. Previously, in order to search for spiritual herbs, Qin Wentian had indeed befriended a few people in Chu. Most likely, after hearing that he was here, they came to pay a visit. Zhang Boyan said, "Invite him in." A while later, an old man came in from outside. He had a tired expression and was very thin. He was just a mystic light realm cultivator. When he came in and saw Zhang Boyan, he knelt down heavily and cried, "Jinren, please help and save my master's life." Zhang Boyan glanced at him and said coldly, "Who are you?" The old man knelt on the ground and said, "I'm Xiang Fu, a steward of the Yin King's palace. Back then, when the Yin King invited Jinren, I was there to accompany him. Do you remember? The Yin King was ranked 6th among the princes. He was the 6th prince who expressed goodwill to Zhang Yan many times back then." Zhang Boyan's gaze moved down and looked at him. He said, "That's right, there was indeed someone like you at the banquet." Xiang Zhanfu choked with sobs and said, "My master is in prison and needs to escape. I came to see you this time, so I hope that Jinren can save my master for the sake of our relationship back then." Zhang Boyan suddenly laughed coldly and said, "What a joke. I've only met your master a few times. We're just acquaintances. How can there be any relationship?" Xiang Zhanfu hurriedly said, Yes, I said the wrong thing. Jinren is an upper-class cultivator. He won't have anything to do with us. It's just that the Yin King is in trouble and none of the experts I know are willing to lend a helping hand. I can only come here to beg Jinren. If this matter is successful, the Yin King is willing to give you a generous gift." Zhang Boyan laughed and said, "Isn't the Yin King on good terms with the Hui Xian Daoren? Why did you come to me instead of him?" Xiang Zhanfu laughed bitterly and said, "Elder ancestor is the current dynasty's state preceptor. It's not easy to invite a prince, let alone him." Zhang Boyan said, "Even your sect's people are trying to evade me. I'm an outsider, what can I do?" Xiang Zhanfu was speechless. He could only kowtow and beg. Zhang Boyan let him do whatever he wanted. After a while, he smiled and said, "Someone, take this person away and settle him down." Xiang Zhanfu was not sure whether he would agree or refuse. But since he did not chase him away, there was still some hope. He really had no other choice. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to Zhang Boyan to beg. Before he left, he suddenly turned around and said, "Master, the servant girl beside your disciple is related to the Chu royal family. It's better not to show her face in the capital of Chu." Zhang Boyan was slightly startled, and then he recalled that the maidservant this person spoke of was Qiao Ying. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and the green flames in his eyes flickered indeterminately. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, Zhao Yang came in and said, "Master, do you want to help this person?" Zhang Boyan snorted and said, "It doesn't matter what I think. In the end, it still depends on the governor. He looked at him again and said in a deep voice, "Let me ask you, have you mastered the spirit exorcism technique that I taught you?" Zhao Yang hurriedly said, "Just a little bit." Zhang Boyan said coldly, "You can't even master a small technique. What's the use of you? I'll give you another month. If you still can't master it, I'll punish you with 30 years of closed-door training." Zhao Yang was shocked. Ever since Zhang Boyan accepted him as his disciple, he only taught him the technique and then sent him away. As for whether he could master it or not, he never asked. Because the spirit exorcism technique was not very useful in a fight, he was not in a hurry to master it. He just spent his energy on polishing it every day. Now that his master gave him a death sentence, he didn't dare to delay. He said yes and went back to his room to practice with a bitter face. About 2 hours later, Zhang Boyan heard the faint whistling of the wind outside the pavilion. He guessed that Zhang Yan had returned, so he came out of the pill room. When he went outside, he saw a familiar ray of light flying over from afar. Song Chuyuan and the lame Taoist were playing chess, but they also sensed it and came out to welcome it. The ray of light landed in the courtyard in the blink of an eye. When the three of them saw it, they hurriedly went up to greet it. Zhang Yan rolled up his sleeves and restrained the spiritual light around him. He then raised his hand and said, "Fellow Taoists, you may rise." The lame Taoist straightened up and said, "Did Jinren sign the contract smoothly?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "The contract is done, there are no problems." Song Chuyuan was a little nervous and said, "Who is Jinren going against? Is it Rong Juanzhong?" Zhang Yan smiled but didn't answer. He only said to Song Chuyuan and Tang Chuyuan, "The Sleeping Star Mountain's Dragon Pillar gathering is on the 6th of next month. There is still a month before that. With such a big movement from Zhongtai, Xian, you will definitely make arrangements. It's just that I don't know much about it. Since the two of you haven't signed the contract, it's convenient for you to come and go. Please go check it out and come back to report to me." The two of them hurriedly nodded. At this time, Zhang Boyan took a step forward and said, "Manor Master, I have something to report." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "Zhang, follow me to the pill room later to talk." The two of them entered the inner room and sat down. Zhang Boyan then told him about the Yin King. Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, "This Yin King was imprisoned because of the palace curtain incident, so it's not appropriate for me to interfere. However, he gave me the snake ring jewel twice. This item is very helpful to my cultivation, so I owe him some karma. Since he came to my door, I can't just ignore him." Zhang Boyan saw that Zhang Yan wanted to help, so he knew what to do. He said, "Manor Master still has to go to the Dragon Pillar gathering and can't be distracted. I have nothing to do, so I can help Manor Master handle this matter." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "With Zhang Zhang's help, it should be settled." Seeing that there was nothing else to do, Zhang Boyan took his leave. When he returned to his room, he ordered someone to find Xiang Zhanfu and said, "You said that you have a gift for me, what is it?" Xiang Zhanfu hesitated for a while, then gritted his teeth and said, "Jinren should know that the founders of Zhongtai and Xianyu factions were the same Grand Master Demi. Before this Grand Master achieved Dao, he had a powerful opponent. Because their cultivation levels were similar, he could not do anything to him. Later on, the Grand Master went to another continent to find a powerful person and borrowed a magical weapon. Only then was he able to subdue this person. After founding Master Demi completed his Dao, he wanted to return this treasure. However, for some reason, not only could he not find this person, even his descendants could not find him. Due to the imminent ascension, he deliberately placed this item in a secret place on the sea and warned his descendants not to take it rashly. If a disciple from the other continents came, he could give it a try. If they were fated with the magic treasure, they could take it. He then knelt down again and said, "Yin King once said that if Jinren is willing to save him, he is willing to tell me the whereabouts of the magical weapon." Zhang Boyan did not expect that the gift would involve an ascended Jinren. He couldn't help but be surprised and asked, "Zhongtai and Xianyu factions have been established for thousands of years. Could it be that no one has been able to take this item?" Xiang Zhanfu said, Jinren is wise. Zhongtai and Xianyu factions have no use for this item. How would they be willing to let it fall into the hands of others? Therefore, they kept this matter a secret. Ordinary people would not know about it. As time passed, no one mentioned it. If it wasn't for Demon King and Crocodile who came to Chu and stole the treasure map, I'm afraid no one would remember this matter. Zhang Boyan's expression changed slightly. At this moment, he also remembered that when he first came to Dongsheng with Zhang Yan, he seemed to have heard people from Xian Luo sect mention this matter. In that case, this person's words were somewhat credible. He said, since the map was stolen, it might have been taken by this demon. Xiang Zhanfu hurriedly said, Jinren, don't worry. That map is only a fake one. Otherwise, how would the Demon King take it? Moreover, there is a restrictive formation at the place where the treasure is buried. Even if we have the map, it would be useless to take it. Ing King once hid a copy of the real map. As long as Ing King is rescued, I will immediately give it to him. Chapter 681. After Zhang Boyan sent Xiang Zhanfu away, he felt that he couldn't handle this matter by himself, so he went to Zhang Yan's room to report. After they met, he explained the matter in detail and said, I've met that King Ying twice. From an ordinary person's point of view, this person can be said to have deep foresight and is not an unintelligent person. Although I don't know why he was thrown into prison this time, but he will definitely not resign himself to death. He will definitely use all his bargaining chips to escape. From what I see, he is very trustworthy. Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, Is the King of Ying in any danger? Zhang Boyan replied, I have already asked. This person is the son of Emperor Chu after all. Although he is imprisoned, he is surrounded in a cave on Mount Shaowen outside of the city. Not only are there guards guarding him, there are also people who will send him food and water every day. Other than the fact that he is not allowed to meet with others, there is no harsh treatment. If there are no accidents, he will spend the rest of his life in the mountain. Zhang Yan immediately said, Since there is no rush, let's talk about this after the Dragon Pillar ritual. There was only 1 month left until the Dragon Pillar ritual. If he could successfully defeat Xianyu, then he would come back and plan this matter. However, if Zhongtai was defeated, then the entire faction would be destroyed. They wouldn't care about a prince who was imprisoned, and it would be easy to rescue him. Zhang Boyan smiled eerily and said, Mannerhead, do you want me to think of a way to get the treasure map first? Although Xiang Zhanfu said that he would give the map to him after the matter was done, he didn't believe that he couldn't get it if he used some tricks. At that time, whether or not he would save him would be up to him. As for whether or not it was moral, it wasn't within his consideration. Zhang Yan waved his sleeves and said, No need. Even if there was no such thing, he was still willing to help because of the snake bracelet that the King of Ying gave him. Moreover, although Master Dami set the rules back then, he said that Xianyue Zhongtai's disciple couldn't take the treasure. But rules were dead, and people were alive. If they really wanted this treasure, he didn't believe that no one would be able to find a loophole in it in the past few thousand years. Because of this, he determined that if he wanted to obtain this magic treasure, he would either have to be a disciple of the person who lent the treasure to him in the past, or he would have to be someone who was fated to obtain it. In short, this treasure is yours. No one else could take it. If it wasn't yours, it would be useless no matter how anxious you were. Why should he be a vile person? At the back of Hope Sound Mountain, sect leader Qiao, dressed in his ceremonial robes, walked alone into a dark stone cave. He couldn't even see his own fingers in front of him. Wherever he landed, he could only hear the echoes of emptiness. Lingering about, a moment later, a bright light appeared in front of his eyes. He had already walked out of the cave. In front of him appeared a stone staircase that was carved along the mountain wall. On the side, there was a waterfall gushing down violently. The stone path was polished until it was smooth and glossy, and the edges and corners were all gone. Following this path, they soon entered the depths of the ravine. After another hour, the scene before his eyes suddenly blurred, and it seemed as if he'd changed to another world. He'd actually arrived within a gorge. This place was quiet and serene. The sound of water dripping could be heard. Like the plucking of a zither, it was pleasing to the ear. Separated by a cliff, he could see a cave door that was 1,000 feet tall. From time to time, there would be clouds rising from the peak, steaming upwards. This was the return of Feather Scenery Grotto Heaven. Ever since Grand Master Demi of Zhongtai, for thousands of years, the three masters of the Grotto Heaven had all cultivated here. Sect leader Qiao shifted his head to take a look, and saw a white rhinoceros the size of a giant elephant lying on a flat rock in front of him. Its huge body was slightly moving up and down as it breathed. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "Dao brother, I wish to pay a visit to the master, please inform him." After a while, the white rhinoceros lazily lifted its eyelids. Seeing that it was sect leader Qiao, it didn't bother with him, turned around, and went back to sleep. Sect leader Qiao shook his head helplessly, and didn't go forward to urge him. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the ground. Although this strange beast was guarding the door, it wasn't voluntary. Instead, it was captured by Master Zheng and forced to swear an oath. Because it was indignant, every time someone from Zhongtai sect came to see it, they would give it the cold shoulder. It had long since gotten used to it. The white rhinoceros slept for 8 hours. Finally, it stretched its limbs and slowly stood up. Its body that was like a small mountain shook, its eyes staring at sect leader Qiao, and it roared, "The master is calling you in." Its voice rumbled, shaking the top of the cave and causing a lot of gravel to shake off. Sect leader Qiao opened his eyes and stood up, bowing. Then, a cloud appeared under his feet, and he soared into the cave. This cave was hidden within a cave, and it was as dense as a beehive. If one didn't know the path, they would definitely not be able to find the right way. After passing through an unknown number of holes, they finally reached the end. On the mountain wall, there was a white jade statue. It was 10 feet tall and deeply embedded into the wall. Its appearance was that of a big-eared Taoist, and its facial features were vivid and lifelike. In front of it, there was a furnace with 2 dragons facing each other, and its entire body was bathed in dense fog. Sect leader Qiao walked in front of the jade statue, lit a high incense, and inserted it into the furnace. After waiting for a moment, he bowed and said, "Master, next month, Martial Nephew will lead everyone to Sleeping Star Mountain to have a showdown with Xian Yu. After this battle, we can decide who will be the true disciple of Patriarch Daimu." The jade statue's eyes suddenly came to life, emitting a fine light. Then, a loud voice came from within. "Go ahead without worry. I'll be in the sect, so you won't have to worry." A trace of worry appeared on sect leader Qiao's face. He could feel that although there was nothing strange in Master Zheng's words, compared to the last time he came, his aura seemed to be much weaker. This master had lived for more than 3,000 years. Logically speaking, he should be at the end of his lifespan. However, Zhongtai had no successor for the past 1,000 years. Once he left, there would be the danger of being annexed by other sections. Therefore, 200 years ago, this jade statue was secretly chiseled out and connected to the underground spirit veins. It was constantly nourished to prolong its life. However, this move could only be delayed for 200 to 300 years. For cultivators, it passed in the blink of an eye. Sect leader Qiao bowed and said, "Martial Nephew, may I ask if Master Zheng could tell what he was thinking and said, I can at least hold on for another 20 years. In this small world created by Grandmaster, outsiders can't peep into it. Don't worry." Sect leader Qiao's face was still worried. He hesitated for a moment, then suddenly bowed deeply and said, "Martial Nephew sincerely asks Martial Uncle to stay for another 100 years. At present, the biggest worry of the Zhongtai sect was that none of its disciples could cultivate the compendium's secret record to the 3rd tier of the nascent soul realm. The ones with the highest cultivation in the sect were him and Elder Yen. Although Du Shixuan wasn't weak, he didn't cultivate the techniques of the sect. Even if they could defeat Xian Yu this time, no one could enter the Grotto Heaven realm. Then, when Master Zheng left, how could they fight against the 3 sects in the south? There was another variable, which was the Python tribe above the North Sea. The demon tribe was eyeing the door like a tiger watching its prey, ready to take a bite at any time. With such internal and external troubles, if the situation didn't reach a point where he had no choice, he really didn't want to fight to the death with Xian Yu at this time. Master Zheng was silent for a moment, then a deep sigh was heard. It's not that I don't want to. It's not easy to prolong my life for a few hundred years. Right now, I can still release my aura to deter the 3 sections. However, the longer the time drags on, the easier it is to reveal flaws. 200 years is already the limit. If it goes on, it will be a futile effort. Sect leader Qiao said excitedly, but as long as Master Zheng is still in the sect, how would others dare to act rashly? Master Zheng just didn't say anything. Sect leader Qiao said with a trembling voice, is there really no other way? Master Zheng seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he slowly said, there's one more way. Sect leader Qiao couldn't help but take a few steps forward and said happily, Martial uncle, please say it. As long as martial nephew can do it, I will do my best. Master Zheng said, if you can defeat Xian Yu this time, it means that the heavens don't want Zhongtai to die. You can use the sect's treasure, the white elephant cauldron, to shift the fate energy and add it to me. That way, you can fulfill your wish. However, if you do that, it will just be a waste of food. Zhongtai will definitely be met with misfortune. You have to think it through. Sect leader Qiao was startled. He frowned and thought for a long time. Then, he raised his head and said resolutely, if martial uncle is not in the sect, it will be difficult for Zhongtai to stand in Dongsheng. It can be said that we are bound together for good or bad. If this method is really feasible, martial nephew is willing to give it a try. He couldn't care about the future now. He could only think about other things after getting through the difficulties in front of him. There was no joy or anger in Master Zheng's voice. He just said, since you have made up your mind, then do it. However, you have to remember that if you don't win this battle, then everything will be over. For the sake of this battle, Sect Master Qiao could be said to have exhausted all of his resources. He said in a deep voice, this time, Zhongtai's sect has already decided to cut off all means of retreat. As long as spiritual master he doesn't obstruct us, there's nothing to worry about. Jinren said, you don't have to worry about this. He Su is around the same age as me. In terms of lifespan, he should have reached the end. A few years ago, I observed the energy in the clouds and it was still flourishing and not declining. He must have used a method to prolong his life. He isn't much better than me now. Sect leader Qiao was slightly relieved and wanted to leave. However, before he left, he thought of something and couldn't help but ask, under that dragon pillar, is there really a Taoist book written by Patriarch Damu? This was also something that the previous sect leader had said before he passed away. He didn't know the specifics. Later on, he fought with Xian Yu. Because the two sects were in the same predicament, he couldn't hand it over no matter if there was or not. In a few days, he would fight with Xian Yu. This might be the last time he came here, so he wanted to get to the bottom of it. Master Zheng said, this is not nonsense. Back then, before Patriarch Damu achieved Tao, he specially went to the dragon pillar. At that time, he brought 2 attendants. One of them was Jinzhong Jinren, and the other was Xian Yu sect's Qinquang Jinren. Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, so that's how it is. He secretly said that it was a pity. The dragon pillars of the 2 sects had only been weakened in the recent hundreds of years, so the 2 sects had the opportunity to take advantage of it. Previously, even if they had the thought of getting to the bottom of it, they didn't know where to start. Since he got the confirmation, he completely let go of his thoughts. What was left was to fight with Xian Yu to the death. He solemnly bowed to Jinren Zheng's jade statue and turned to leave the cave. After he left for a long time, Bai Shi, who was lying at the door, suddenly said, Zheng Weixing, what you said just now was clearly nonsense. Jinren Zheng said calmly, if he didn't do that, he would also lose his heart. How could he fight Xian Yu? Bai Shi sneered and said, but if you die 100 years later, won't I have to guard the door for you for another 100 years? At this time, Zhenren said lightly, I advise you to wait for a few more days. It's not a good thing to rush out. Baishi asked doubtfully, why? Chapter 682. On the first day of the 6th month, the Zhongtai sect gathered all the elders and disciples above the core transformation stage, the city lords of the various immortal cities, and the nascent soul cultivators that they had recruited. There were exactly 42 of them. They set off from the Golden Bell platform and flew toward the Sleeping Star Mountain where the battle was going to take place. Those who could cultivate to the Yuanying stage were mostly lords of a region. They brought flying instruments with them, and behind them were hundreds of disciples. Many of them rode on boats in the sky and displayed their abilities. From afar, it was as if the clouds were dyed red, and the sky was filled with clusters. They gathered like a tide and rushed towards the southeast. Sect leader Qiao and his wife were riding on a three-shouldered flying carriage with a golden canopy. It was as big as a palace room and could accommodate 1,000 people. In front of it, there were 186 dragon horses pulling it. The horses neighed and neighed. Around the carriage, there were more than 500 disciples guarding it on long boats. The husband and wife were dressed in luxurious Taoist robes and stood side by side under the canopy. Madame Zhao looked back at the mountain gate with worry in her eyes. Sect leader, this time our sect is out in full force. There is no one left to guard the sect. I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Sect leader Qiao comforted her. Don't worry. The sect has Zhenren to look after it. The gathering of dragon pillars is the most important thing. If we can't win, what's the use of this pile of rubble? He paused and softened his tone. Are you worried about Cheng? I've already told Wanyang that if we can't make it back, she should bring Cheng and Dao Shu to another continent. There's no need to come back, and don't hope to achieve Dao in this life. Just live a long life. Cheng was his and Madame Zhao's son. He was only 5 years old and not old enough to cultivate Dao. Other than a few confidants, even Elder Yan and Du Shixuan didn't know about him. Madame Zhao frowned when she heard sect leader Qiao's ominous tone. It was as if he was making arrangements for his death. She forced a smile and pretended to be relaxed. My husband has gathered so many people. Their strength is far greater than the previous duels. How could they lose? Sect leader Qiao sighed. There are many people, but their hearts are not united. What can we do? As he spoke, he looked towards the end of the horizon and said, My Zhongtai sect lost the last 2 battles, and as the sect master of Zhongtai sect, I can't absolve myself from the blame. If I lose again this time, then how would I have the face to sit on this position? In this battle, if you don't win, you'll die. Madame Zhao sighed and leaned against him. She held his hand and said softly, Husband, don't worry. In terms of ability, Sun doesn't lose to Rong Juanzhong. I, Zhongtai, have a greater chance of winning. Sect leader Qiao nodded silently. He grabbed Madame Zhao's slender hand and squeezed it hard before letting go. The two of them quietly stayed on the boat for a while. Madame Zhao looked up and said, My husband, I have been practicing my secret technique for the past few days. I'm a little tired, so I'm going to rest first. Recently, sect leader Qiao had been cultivating in seclusion to deal with the dragon pillar battle. He did not sleep peacefully in Madame Zhao's room. When he heard that Madame Zhao was also training hard in a divine power, he gently said, Madam, please do not work too hard. Madame Zhao smiled gently, bowed, and excused herself. She returned to the carriage. She looked behind her and saw that no one followed her. She walked down the stairs and arrived in front of an alchemy room. She waved the maid in front of her away and looked left and right. She quickly lifted the curtain and entered the room. She then used a restrictive spell to seal the door. After calming herself down, she shook her sleeves and a pearl flew out. After it circled around the room, a cloud of smoke flew out and a graceful figure appeared. When the smoke dissipated, it was a young lady with bright eyes. Her skin was as white as jade, and her lips were red. She was so beautiful that even Madame Zhao paled in comparison to her. Especially this lady's bright eyes, clear and clean. There was a sense of innocence and kindness that made people feel good about her. Madame Zhao saw the lady's appearance and was slightly dazed. She then probed, "Are you Lady Luo?" The lady curtsied and said with a sweet voice, "Yes, I am." Madame Zhao took a deep breath. Even though the woman in front of her was only at the level of the golden core, her status was not to be underestimated. She did not dare to look down on her. She said gently, "Lady Luo, I would like to ask, if I agree to your tribe's conditions, will you really help me, Zhongtai, to overcome this crisis?" The lady said, "Madame Zhao, I am only in charge of passing the message. I don't know what Madame Zhao said to those nephews. I can only say that if it was something that was already agreed upon, my tribe will not go back on our word." Madame Zhao looked at her and saw that she was serious. She did not seem to be trying to trick her. She nodded and started thinking again. That day when Luo Dongchuan came, he said that he could help Zhongtai deal with Xianyu. All he needed was a place in Dongshan continent for the Mang tribe to settle down. Not only that, he could also help Zhongtai form an alliance to fight against the three southern factions. At that time, she was tempted. However, she and sect leader Qiao had been married for hundreds of years. She knew that unless he was at the end of his rope, he would never agree to this condition. However, she did not want to break off this line. After some discussion, the Mang tribe sent this lady over. They said that if they had any ideas, they could inform them at any time. Just now, she was confused because of her concern. Now, she gradually calmed down. She hesitated for a while and said apologetically, "Lady Luo, I am sorry. Let me think about it." The lady had a good temper. She smiled sweetly and said, "No problem. Madam, when you have decided, you can call me Lady Luo again." Madame Zhao waved the pearl in her hand. The lady turned into a wisp of smoke and entered the pearl. A few miles away from sect leader Qiao and his wife's carriage, there was a dragon-headed boat with 7 wings. This was Du Shixuan's carriage. At this moment, Zhang Yan was also sitting on this boat. Du Shixuan seemed to be in high spirits. He pointed at his feet and said, "This boat is called the time-frightening ox boat. It flies very fast. Every 2 hours, it plays a tune that can disturb the ears and eyes of cultivators and cause them to feel uneasy. There are also 12 flags. Once taken out, it can set up a restrictive formation in a breath. Even if many Yuanian cultivators attack at the same time, they will not be able to break through. I have asked my father for it a few times, but he always refused. I didn't expect to get it today." There was a handsome Taoist sitting below. He flattered, "Young sect leader, with this boat, you are like a tiger that has grown wings. Rong Juanzhong is no match for you." Although this flattery was a little clumsy, Du Shixuan felt that it was natural. He immediately laughed and said, "Well said. Someone, bestow a jar of life-preserving celestial wine to Taoist Xing." The Taoist was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed and quickly got up to thank him. This life-preserving celestial wine was not an ordinary wine. It was brewed from the dew accumulated in the white elephant cauldron every day and supplemented with hundreds of spiritual herbs. There was only 1 jar a year. Even if a cultivator drank it, it would have the effect of nourishing their qi and prolonging their life. In the Zhongtai sect, it was usually only bestowed upon those who had made great contributions. He did not expect to get it with just a few words, so he could not help but feel proud. He looked at Zhang Yan as if he was showing off. Zhang Yan smiled and ignored him. This Taoist's name was Xingfu Lu. When he signed the contract, he was originally a disciple of Elder Yan. However, it was later rumored that Elder Yan had an affair with one of Elder Lin's concubines, so he switched to Du Shixuan. Although this person's cultivation was not very high, Du Shixuan was not on good terms with the elders. After hearing about this, he wanted to annoy Elder Lin. Therefore, not only did he take Xingfu Lu as his subordinate, he also repeatedly rewarded him. Xingfu Lu thought to himself, Du Shixuan is so generous, and this Taoist Zhang came here long before me. I wonder how much more benefits he received. What does this jar count for? Thinking about this, he became dissatisfied. He rolled his eyes and said, Taoist Zhang, I heard that you are in charge of the celestial city of Shenwu Mountain. I have been to many famous mountains and rivers in Dongsheng, but I have never been here. How does Shenwu Mountain compare to other places? Zhang Yan smiled and said calmly, I came from another continent and have been in the sect for a long time. I have not been to other places. When Xing Fu Lu heard that he was a cultivator from another continent, he felt disdain in his heart. He laughed and deliberately put on a blushing expression. He said, Dongsheng is very far away from other continents. I wonder why Taoist Zhang crossed the ocean to come here. At this point, he exclaimed and slapped his forehead. He put on an apologetic expression and said, It is my fault. If it is inconvenient for Taoist Zhang, there is no need to say it. When Du Shixuan heard this, he seemed to remember something. He suddenly turned to look at Zhang Yan and said with a burning gaze, I heard from the servants that a few hundred years ago, Shen Baishuang, who came to Dongsheng to travel, was Taoist Zhang's uncle master. After he took Zhang Yan as his subordinate, he told Madame Zhao. After that, Madame Zhao ordered people to investigate his background. Just now, she knew that this person's background was not simple, so she told her son to win him over. Zhang Yan did not hide it and admitted, yes. Du Shixuan nodded. When Shen Baishuang traveled to Dongsheng, as long as someone came to his door, he would kill them without saying a word. This suited his temperament. He put on a serious expression and said, I have heard of Jinrenshen's fame in the past. I believe Taoist Zhang is also somewhat capable. I hope that Taoist friend will join me in fighting the enemy. Zhang Yan bowed and said, that is how it should be. Du Shixuan laughed and said, come, give Jinren Zhang 3 jars of millennium life-preserving wine. Xing Fu Lu's expression changed slightly. From the wine, he could tell that the two of them had a high status in Du Shixuan's heart. He could not help but curse and said, you are just relying on the shadow of your ancestors. What's so great about it? In a few days, you better not show your fear in the battle. After Zhongtai sect traveled southeast for 5 days, they arrived at Sleeping Star Mountain on the 6th day of the month. Du Shixuan stood up from his seat and took a few steps to the bow of the boat. He pointed ahead and said, Taoist friend, please take a look. That is the South Dragon Pillar. Legend has it that it was the place where founding Master Daimu cultivated. Zhang Yan looked ahead and saw a huge pillar in the clouds. The pillar's body was faintly discernible. It was actually a convergence of mist and smoke. At the top, there was a coiling dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. In the clear sky for thousands of miles, this snow-white pillar of smoke reached the sky. It was condensed and did not dissipate. Beside it, there were dozens of floating mountains of different sizes surrounding it. It was a magnificent sight. Not mentioning the Immortal's palace below, just this scene alone could be considered a great spectacle. Zhang Yan took a few glances and felt a sense of déjà vu. After thinking about it again, he realized that the flying mountains were quite similar to the Star Stone. He said, I heard that this object was left behind by ancient celestials. Now, it seems that it is possible. Chapter 683. While Zhang Yan was pondering, Zhongtai's group of cultivators had already arrived in front of Sleeping Star Mountain. At that moment, sect leader Qiao issued an order for everyone to slow down and not rashly enter the mountain. Although there were many cultivators there and Xian Yu would not have the intention to ambush them, it was easy for them to cause some trouble and humiliate Zhongtai's cultivators. Everyone perked up and drove the flying boat forward slowly. A moment later, they entered the mountain. As soon as Zhang Yan entered, he felt that something was amiss. He looked up and saw that the weather around him had suddenly changed. A moment ago, it was clear that the sky was clear and warm, but all of a sudden, a strong wind pushed the river, and the waves were high and swift, sweeping away the clouds in the sky. The next moment, it was sad and bleak, cold dew condensed, and fallen leaves fluttered. Not long after, it was raining and snowing, haze, clouds, hail, and frost returned to the earth. For a moment, it was as if the 4 seasons had changed in an instant. Xing Fuliu was shocked. He stood up and said, "The weather has changed. Could it be that the people from Xianyu sect have arrived?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "The people from Xianyu sect are in a good mood. They actually use such a treasure to welcome their guests." The weather within thousands of miles of Sleeping Star Mountain had also changed. Even a cultivator at the 3rd stage of Yuanying did not have such an ability. Other than the venerable Dongtian, only the treasure of Xianyu sect, the 3-mountain qi suppressing tablet, could do it. However, this might be able to intimidate those cultivators who did not know about it. Most of the cultivators who came were Yuanying cultivators, so no one would be frightened. Du Shixuan sneered and said, "What a good treasure. After this battle, it will belong to me, Zhongtai." On the other side of the flying boat, Elder Lin snorted and said, "I've long heard that Xianyu sect has disrespected the ancestors. They are showing off the treasures bestowed by Patriarch Daimu. Their luck is endless, and it's unreasonable." Elder Yen smiled faintly and said, "The 2 sects are united. However, we need to know our limits during the battle later. We are not the ones to take the lead, so don't force yourself." As he spoke, he gestured towards where Du Shixuan was, and his intentions were self-evident. Elder Bai and Elder Lin exchanged glances with each other and nodded to show that they understood. The Zhongtai sect came from the west, and there was a majestic peak in the east of the Sleeping Star Mountain, which was the highest among the mountains. At the foot of the mountain, there was a large meandering river that flowed ceaselessly. There was an altar built on top of it. There were dozens of Taoists dressed in different clothes, guarding one person in the middle. This person was tall and muscular, his face was fair and beardless, and his eyes were bright and clear. It was Xianyu sect master, Yang Shuyong. There were 2 people standing beside him. The one on the left was short and skinny with a bald head. There was a ring of faint golden light around his fontanelle, holding up 3 strong clouds. He was the guardian elder of the sect, the Golden Spirit Elder. The one on the right was about 3 meters tall, and he was tall and strong. He held a black metal plate in his hand, wore a pheasant crown and golden armor, and had a pair of iron whips hanging from his waist. He was the chief messenger of the sect, Chun Yuji. Not far in front of Yang Shuyong, there was a beautiful girl dressed in red clothes. She was happily playing with a jade tablet in her hand, and as she shook the treasure in her small hand, streaks of spiritual light shot into the sky, causing the weather to change. The Golden Spirit Elder suddenly felt something, and said in a low voice, "Sect Master, the people from Zhongtai's sect have arrived." Yang Shuyong's expression slightly froze. He walked forward, and lovingly caressed the little girl's head, saying, "Stop playing." The little girl tugged at Yang Shuyong's robe, and pouted, saying, "Daddy, let her play for a while longer." Yang Shuyong bent down, and picked up the little girl, coaxing, "Be obedient. Take this jade tablet, you can play with it however you want when you get back." The little girl happily cheered, and said, "Daddy, don't go back on your word." Chun Yu-cheong chuckled, and lightly caressed the back of the little girl's head. The little girl immediately fell into a deep sleep. He turned around and handed the jade tablet to a servant girl behind him, and said with an indifferent expression, "Take good care of her, if there are any mistakes, you will know what to do." The servant girl's body trembled, and she lowered her head, and carefully left with the little girl. The Golden Spirit Elder pondered for a moment, and said, "Sect Master, the young master is still young, and it is not appropriate for him to hold the sect's precious treasure." Yang Shuyong was not pleased, and he said, "It is just a broken jade that can change the weather, can't I give it back to my daughter?" The Golden Spirit Elder quickly lowered his head, and he said, I don't dare, it is just a gift from the Patriarch after all." Yang Shuyong ignored him, and he turned around to look behind him, and said loudly, "This sect master has given the 3-mountain qi suppressing tablet to my daughter, do you have any objections?" None of the elders and cultivators behind him made a sound. Yang Shuyong then looked at the Golden Spirit Elder, and he was satisfied when he saw him lowering his head, not daring to say anything. He had only been the sect master for a short period of time, but the previous sect master, with the support of a few protectors and elders, had changed the sect's cultivation method, and people like Rong Juanzhong appeared. After he took over the sect, he used this good foundation to defeat Zhong Tai twice in a row, and his prestige increased greatly. Only then did he stabilize his position as the sect master. Compared to the elders of Zhong Tai's sect, he had walked on a different path, and he believed that there was nothing that the patriarch could not exchange for. Just now, he purposely took out the sect's treasure for his daughter to play with, and now he said he would give it to her. He wanted to use this to test the reaction of the people in the sect, and see if there were still people who were not convinced. If there were, he would use this chance to clean them up. Chun Yuji saw the heavy atmosphere, and he took the initiative to say, "Sect Master, look, there are many people from Zhong Tai." Yang Shuyong glanced over, and he said, "About 40 people." Xiao Huanzhuan, Du Shixuan, Hui Xian, Zhao Ru, TSK, they're all here. This time, Zhong Tai is not leaving any way out. Although Xian Yu had won the previous 2 battles, he had also suffered quite a bit of damage. He wasn't much better off than Zhong Tai. As a result, after Zhong Tai recruited cultivators from other sects, Yang Shuyong followed suit. For this battle, all the Yuanying cultivators that could be invited were invited, and the number of people was roughly equal. This battle could be said to have gathered almost half of the Yuanying cultivators in the entire Dongshin continent, and it could be said that all the sects in the continent had their eyes on this place. The Golden Spirit Elder observed carefully for a while, and he calculated, "Sect Master, Zhong Tai sect originally had 9 elders, but in the previous 2 battles, 3 died, and only 6 are left. There are also 11 celestial city lords, and this time, more than 50% of the cultivators are from outside the sect, and it is exactly as the secret report said." Yang Shuyong sneered, "What secret report? Zhong Tai didn't hide anything at all. Golden Spirit Protector, you don't have to show off, I know your contribution." The Golden Spirit Elder coughed. This sect master's words were sharp. He never gave people face, and although he was used to it, that was in private. Now that he was in front of everyone, he couldn't help but feel annoyed. Chun Yuji said, "Sect Master, Zhong Tai seems to be strong, and our sect is slightly inferior, but as long as we can think of a way to get rid of the 6 people and Sect Master Qiao and his wife, the rest won't fight us to the death." Yang Shuyong waved his hand, and said, "Going against me, Xian Yu, won't let them off easily. Remember, today, we are facing Zhong Tai's people, don't let a single one of them go, we must kill them all. Don't let a single one of them go. You must kill them all. As for the others, let's see if they know their place." His words were filled with killing intent, and Chun Yuji and the Golden Spirit Elder's expressions changed slightly. There were many Yuanying cultivators on the other side, and if they fought to the death, causing Xian Yu to suffer too many losses, how would they deal with the 3 southern sects? Putting this aside, Xian Yu and Zhong Tai came from the same root. Even if they lost, it wouldn't be to the point of fighting to the death. Yang Shuyong saw that no one responded, and mocked, "Are you all afraid? Humph. In Zhong Tai sect, other than Du Shixuan, only Yan Luoqing and Xiao Huanzhuan have slightly higher cultivations, the rest are all Yuanying first rank, how can they compare to me, Xian Yu?" Ever since Xian Yu changed his cultivation method, not only did he produce an outstanding character like Rong Juanzhong, there were also 4 cultivators who stepped into the 2nd rank. Including Sect Master Yang Shuyong and the Golden Spirit Elder, there were 6 Yuanying 2nd rank cultivators, their abilities far above Zhong Tai. The Golden Spirit Elder reminded, "Sect Master, Zhong Tai still has ancestor Hui Xian, his cultivation is unfathomable, don't be careless." Yang Shuyong said impatiently, "This old thief will be taken care of by enlightened Rong, you don't have to be afraid, it's not your turn to fight this person, leave." The Golden Spirit Elder could only leave. Chun Yuji watched for a while, then suddenly pointed and said, "Sect Master, the person sitting next to Du Shixuan also seems to be a Yuanying 2nd rank cultivator." Yang Shuyong grunted, his eyes focused as he looked at the direction Chunyuji pointed at, frowned and asked, "Do you know this person?" An additional second-rank cultivator could give them some trouble, but Xian Yu still had the upper hand, so there was no need to worry. But he was afraid that Zhong Tai would lead a wolf into the house, colluding with the scourge of the North Sea demon tribe. But looking at this person's aura, not only was he not a demon cultivator, he seemed to be from a large sect. He didn't remember such a person from the 5 sections. The Golden Spirit Elder quickly came over and said, "Sect Master, that person's surname is Zhang. He is the leader of the Northern Godly House's Deep Abyss Gate." Yang Shuyong muttered to himself, "Deep Abyss Gate, why does it sound so familiar? There are at least 20 people from the 5 sects who can cultivate to the 2nd rank, and all of them are famous. Who is this person?" The Golden Spirit Elder hesitated. This person claims to be from the same sect as Shen Baishuang from 200 years ago. He should be his junior. Yang Shuyong thought about it, then asked, "Is it the Shen Baishuang who killed Elder Chu?" The Golden Spirit Elder said, "Sect Master's vision is vast. It is this person." Yang Shuyong sneered. He made his decision extremely quickly and immediately said, "No wonder. I was originally thinking that such a talent was rare and wanted to recruit him. Since he has an old grudge with my sect, I can't keep him. Send out my orders. I'll bestow an immortal city to whoever can kill this person." The Golden Spirit Elder nodded and said in a deep voice, "That's right, since he came to us, we can't let him go. Elder Chu and I have a good relationship, please hand this person over to Daoren." When Shen Baishuang came to Dongsheng, one of the Xian Yu sect's elders had a bad relationship with him, so they fought, but since the difference in their cultivation was too big, the elder was killed in an instant. At that time, the Xian Yu sect's heavenly abode, Hisu, was trying to extend his life, so he couldn't do anything to Shen Baishuang, who was already a Yuanying 3rd-rank cultivator, so he could only tolerate him. After the incident, it was even stranger that he actually ordered his disciples not to seek revenge on the Deep Abyss Gate. As for the reason behind it, only Jinren he knew after the death of the previous sect master. Yang Shuyong said, "All right. It's rare for the Golden Spirit Protector to ask for help, so of course I will fulfill your wish, but I have to say this first, if you fail and bring shame to the Xian Yu sect, I will punish you." Since the Golden Spirit Elder had spoken, then there was no way out. He thought he had something to rely on, so he said, "Daoren obeys." At this moment, a female cultivator came from afar and stopped a few miles away. Wan Fu said, "Is this the Xian Yu sect master, Jinren?" Sect Master Qiao invites Jinren up to the extreme heaven for a chat. Yang Shuyong smiled in disdain. Qiao Huanzhuan still likes this kind of thing. That's good, I want to see what he can do this time. Chapter 684. After Yang Shuyong went up to the zenith heaven, he looked around and saw that Zhongtai sect master Qiao Huanzhuan had already arrived. He was also alone. He greeted, "Sect Master Qiao, long time no see. I wonder how your honorable sect's Master Zheng is doing." Sect leader Qiao's expression didn't change. "Your sect's Shinren, he has thought it through." Yang Shuyong snorted and didn't ask anymore. Both of them were sect leaders, so after greeting each other, they chatted for a while before getting to the main topic. Sect leader Qiao said, "I invited sect leader Yang here today because I had a sudden impulse to change the rules of the previous duel." Yang Shuyong smiled faintly. "Sect leader Qiao, please speak, I'm all ears." Sect leader Qiao said solemnly, "It's simple. Chu has 37 celestial cities and 4 lower sect celestial cities. How about using them to make a bet with your sect?" "Using celestial cities?" Yang Shuyong was surprised at first, then his eyes lit up and he laughed. He could see the other party's plan. He just wanted to win Xian Yu's celestial city fair and square. As long as Zhong Tai could defeat Xian Yu, they would have one East Continent and there wouldn't be any more obstacles for the two sects to unite. He couldn't help but laugh at him for overestimating himself. But this was also what he wanted, so he didn't reject it. If Xian Yu won this battle, the remaining Zhongtai disciples in the Chu country might not be convinced and come to defend the immortal city to the death. He wouldn't be able to do anything to them in a short period of time. If he could win in the Dharma assembly, that would be the best. So he said solemnly, Taoist brother Chiao has such spirit, I don't dare to not play with you. But how the rules are set, we need to discuss it in detail. Sect leader Chiao said, if your sect wins, you take a city. If you lose, he looked over, you have to lose a city. Yang Shuyong smiled proudly. I'm just afraid that your sect doesn't have enough celestial cities to lose. Sect leader Chiao pointed behind him and said, other than the celestial city, we still have the Golden Bell Tower, the capital of Chu, and the 5-elephant cauldron that we have worshipped for thousands of years. Is that enough? Yang Shuyong snorted and said, that's more than enough. It's just that fighting back and forth like this. It's inevitable that it'll be dull and boring, but this Yang wants to add a little more excitement. Sect Master Chiao said, please speak, fellow Taoist Yang. Yang Shuyong waved his sleeve and dispersed the astral cloud beneath his feet. He raised his finger and pointed at it, saying, fellow Taoist Chiao, please take a look below. Sleeping Star Mountain has more than 30 hills of different sizes. How about this? Our two clans can use this 1,000-mile radius as a chessboard. Whichever family's disciple was careless and left the mountain during the battle would be considered to have lost the battle. No matter which family's disciple won a round, they would be able to use the mountain as the boundary. The loser could no longer escape. It was like a chess piece that had been set and could not change its mind. What do you think, brother? Sect Master Chiao was silent for a while. He glanced at him and said, fellow Taoist Yang has put in a lot of effort. Yang Shuyong purposely used words to provoke him. Could it be that brother Chiao is afraid of losing? Sect leader Chiao said slowly, just as you said. Since the two of them had already come to an agreement, they were not in the mood to talk anymore. After agreeing on the date of the duel, they exchanged farewell gifts. Then, they returned to their own clan's formation. Sect Master Chiao returned to the Paleo flying carriage and ordered someone to find 6 clan elders. He passed down the rules of the duel just now to them. He didn't care about their reactions and returned to the carriage to circulate his arts and adjust his breathing. However, when Elder Yen heard this, he frowned deeply. Elder Lin had always followed Elder Yen's lead. Seeing his expression, he asked nervously, Senior brother, is there something wrong? Elder Bai's expression was solemn. He said, Xian Yu's intentions are sinister. Sect Master was careless and agreed to it rashly. This is a lack of consideration. If we follow this rule, our sect's cultivators will inevitably have less leeway when moving around. Add to that the fact that we will be confined to one place during the duel, and that will be very disadvantageous for us. Although Zhongtai and Xian Yu clans came from the same lineage, Zhongtai's movement techniques were superior to Xian Yu's. No matter how one looked at this rule, Zhongtai was at a disadvantage. Elder Yen shook his head slightly and said in a low voice, half of the cultivators here are not disciples of our sect. I suspect that Xian Yu's actions are not as simple as they seem. It's just that I can't see through it at the moment. Elder Bai couldn't help but be surprised. He thought for a moment and said, so you're saying that there's more to it? But if Xian Yu cult really has some kind of plan, it's too late to back out now. Senior brother, we can only deal with it when the time comes. Elder Yen nodded and said, that's the only way. Order someone to spread the news. Not long after, dozens of messenger disciples flew to various places. Du Shushuan also quickly learned of this. He laughed mockingly. He also thought that Xian Yu wanted to suppress Zhongtai's movement technique. He said, Yang Shuyong thinks that he can control our sect with this method? Zhang Yan's eyes flickered slightly. He looked at the surrounding mountains, and after a while, he seemed to be thinking of something. Xing Fuliu had tasted the sweetness earlier, and now he stood up and flattered, our Zhongtai has the young sect master watching over it. Xian Yu cult is trapped in a cocoon of their own making. Du Shushuan accepted it calmly and said, as long as the two of you help me properly, after we destroy Xian Yu, I will reward you generously in addition to the sect's reward. Xing Fuliu was excited, and for a moment, his flattery was like a tide. Zhang Yan smiled and cupped his hands to show his thanks. At this moment, a disciple came over and said, "Young sect master, the spell altar has been set up. Elder Yan, please come with us." Du Shixuan looked into the distance and saw that there were already more than 10 spell altars of various sizes surrounding the place where the sect master's carriage had stopped. This was used to communicate with the earth's veins and gather spiritual energy, making it convenient for the people who came here to circulate their energy and rest. He stood up from the flying ship and said, "The two of you, follow me." He turned the flying ship, turned into a ball of rumbling fire, and flew out. He circled the sky once, then suddenly laughed and rushed down to one of the spell altars. After landing with a loud bang, he tore apart the flames and walked out. He glanced sideways at Elder Yan and the other two sitting on the altar and said, "I think this place is not bad, and the view is good. Elder Yan, why don't you let me have it?" According to the rules of etiquette, this spell altar was right next to Sect Master Qiao's Pushou flying carriage, so it should be Elder Yan's place of residence. However, Du Shixuan clearly wanted to take it for himself. Not only did he go against the rules, but he also had the intention of humiliating them. When Elder Lin and Elder Bai heard this, their expressions immediately changed. Elder Yan, however, did not seem to mind. He chuckled and said, "Since young sect master has his eyes on it, then Daoren can just move to another place." Elder Yan stretched out his hand and stopped Elder Lin, who was about to speak, and said, "Let's go." Elder Lin snorted, then glared fiercely at Xing Fuliu and Zhang Yan who were behind Du Shixuan. Only then did he follow Elder Yan to another spell altar to settle down. After sitting down, the more he thought about it, the angrier he felt. He scolded, "This kid is so arrogant, like a mad dog. He is looking down on us more and more. Senior brother, why do you always give in to him?" Elder Yan said indifferently, "Junior brother, the enemy of Xian Yu is in front of us. Don't cause trouble. Everything can be discussed after the battle." Elder Bai also reminded, "Tomorrow's battle will definitely be a fierce battle. Junior brother Lin, don't get angry. Rest well and face the enemy." Elder Lin could only endure it and said in a muffled voice, "Yes, senior brother." On the other side, after Xian Yu's sect master Yang Shuyong returned, Elder Jin Ling came to ask, "Sect master, how is it?" Yang Shuyong didn't look at him. Instead, he said to Chunyu Ji, "Messenger Chunyu, Qiao Huanzhuan has fallen into my trap. This time, Zhong Tai can't escape. Quickly go and make arrangements." Chunyu Ji's spirit was lifted. He knew that once the plan succeeded, the matter of Xian Yu devouring Zhong Tai was half done. He immediately cupped his fists and left. The disciples of the two sects knew that tomorrow's battle would be held, so they each rested and didn't disturb each other. Because there were dozens of Yuanying cultivators gathered here, the wind in the Sleeping Star Mountain swirled and stirred up the clouds. Within 1,000 miles, spiritual light shone in the sky. The night passed quickly. On the second day, the sect masters of the two sects dressed up and came out to the spell altar. The two of them first led their disciples to set up the incense table and prayed to the ancestral master in heaven. They then exchanged golden talismans, jade plates, robes, and ribbons to show that they were from the same sect. Once the meal time was over, the ceremonial vessels and items were kept away. The disciples of the two sects returned to their positions and waited for the sect master's order. Yang Shuyong sat on the high platform and said to his left and right, "The first few battles are very important. I expect that after 2 or 3 battles, Zhong Tai will see through my flaws. Who will go first?" Chunyu Ji wanted to go first, but just now, he saw an elder with a silver beard and black robe. A horned dragon coiled around his arm walked out, so he stopped. The elder cupped his fists and said, "I'm willing to go." Yang Shuyong nodded and said, "It's best that Protector Lan is willing to go. I will allow it." The elder bowed again and flew away. When he reached the front, he said loudly, "I, Lan Jianguang, accept the position of Protector Elder of Xian Yu. Who will come forward?" Madame Zhao saw that Xian Yu had already called for a battle. She turned her beautiful eyes and saw that Sect Master Qiao was still resting with his door closed. She pushed him and said, "Husband, who will go?" Sect Master Qiao opened his eyes and said, "This Lan Jingguang isn't well known. I've never heard of him before and he's not a second-stage cultivator. I don't know where Xian Yu found this helper. Pass down the order and have Elder Yan arrange someone to go up and fight." Madame Zhao felt that her husband was a little strange, but she didn't think too much about it when a great enemy was in front of them. Moreover, in Zhongtai sect, there were many things that the sect master couldn't make decisions by himself. She thought that it was because they were facing a great enemy. She thought of the big picture and expressed her goodwill to the group of elders, so she passed down the order. Elder Yan and a few other disciples discussed for a while and quickly sent out someone. This person wasn't a disciple of Zhongtai sect, but a cultivator from another sect that was recruited. It was obvious that they weren't sure of Lan Jingguang's background and sent him up to test him. The Yuanying cultivator was also a cautious person. After reporting his name, he didn't rush to attack. Instead, he took a few steps back and took out his Dharma treasure and protective treasure light in one breath, forming a tight defense. Lan Jingguang glanced at him coldly and suddenly threw the horned dragon in his hand. This thing was originally only a few feet long, but once it left his hand, it shook its body and suddenly grew to dozens of feet long. Its two fierce eyes glared and emitted a bright red light. The Yuanying cultivator was stunned when he saw this. Before he could react, the horned dragon swallowed him in one gulp. Lan Jingguang's expression was indifferent. With a wave of his hand, the horned dragon shrank back to a few feet long and coiled around his arm again. He then bowed towards Sect Master Qiao of Zhongtai sect and returned to Xian Yu's formation. Chapter 685. Zhongtai's side lost one of their disciples as soon as they arrived, causing the audience to gasp. However, the cultivators in the sect acted as if nothing had happened. They whispered to each other and pointed at each other, discussing the person just now. Elder Bai looked at the direction Lan Jingguang left, and after thinking for a while, he made a judgment that spirit dragon was raised by Fu Yang sect's snake-eyed demonic Taoist. It was originally taken by Fengxiang Sword School. How did it end up in Xian Yu sect's hands? Elder Lin said scornfully, "Xian Yu sect's words sound nice, saying that they won't associate with the heretical sections a few days ago. They even mocked my Zhongtai as a place that hides filth. But in private, who knows how many shady deals they have." Bai Chang Daoran said, "The spirit dragon's scales are tough, and only powerful talismans can harm it. It's also born with a pair of red eyes that can confuse the mind. Luckily, it flies slowly, so if we meet this person again, it won't be hard to avoid it. I'm just afraid that this person has more tricks up his sleeves." Yan Chang Daoran said, "Don't worry, my two juniors. That person's cultivation isn't high, so he might not be able to make the spirit dragon listen to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a hurry to return." Elder Bai said with realization, "That's right." Senior brother's words hit the nail on the head. If that's the case, there's no need to be afraid. At this moment, a flying boat came from the opposite side. A Taoist child was riding on it, and he held a sword in his arms. There was a picture of a mountain on the sword hilt, which was the token of Xian Yu sect's sect leader. When he got close, he raised the sword above his head and said with a clear child's voice, "Sect leader Yang ordered me to send a message, asking your sect to give up the mountain and find another place to stay." When the cultivators of Zhongtai heard this, their expressions turned ugly. The place they were at was wide and flat, with a mountain behind them and a river in front of them. It was a great location, and just now, there were dozens of altars. Although it wasn't difficult to build another altar, it was embarrassing to be forced to leave as soon as they gained a foothold. Sect leader Qiao, however, didn't show any displeasure. He waved his hand, and a young man beside him stood up and said, "Please reply to your sect leader, we will do as we promised." The Taoist boy bowed and shook the talisman. He turned around and went back. Elder Yan pondered for a moment, then flew up from the altar and stopped in front of sect leader Qiao's carriage. He bowed and took the initiative to apologize. This old man's arrangement for this formation was improper. Please punish me, sect leader. Sect leader Qiao consoled him instead, saying, since it's a duel, it's inevitable that there will be winners and losers. This is a common occurrence. Elder Yan, don't blame yourself. You'll just have to get your revenge next time. Seeing that sect leader Qiao had easily let go of the matter, Elder Yan also put on a grateful expression at the right time. He bowed and said, thank you for your forgiveness, sect leader. I wonder where the disciples should go. Sect leader Qiao stroked his beard and looked. After a short while, he pointed to a mountaintop in the northwest and said, I think that place is suitable for us to stand. Elder Yan turned around to look at Zhang Xian. He also agreed and said, this old man will go arrange it right away. After bowing respectfully once more, he returned to the altar. Elder Lin hurriedly came over and asked, Senior brother, did the sect leader make things difficult for you? Elder Yan said in a natural tone. He said, don't worry, it's just a loss of an outsider. How could the sect leader blame him? He's just putting on an act for others to see. After he said that, he waved his hand and found a disciple. He instructed, send a peaceful longevity pill to every spell altar. As for the deceased Dao friend, send 3 bushels of Big Dipper heroes and a ship of cinnabar to comfort his heart. After that disciple left, Bai Chang Daoran said, I'll go arrange for the altar to be moved. Yan Chang Daoran said, thank you, junior brother. After the arrangements were made, the Zhongtai cultivators could only move their carriages forward. Originally, it attracted a lot of complaints, but once the peaceful longevity pill was in their hands, they all quieted down. On the mountaintop in the northwest direction, they once again set up the altar. After being busy for an hour, it was finally settled. At this time, everyone looked at Elder Yan. Just now, it was Xian Yu who came out to challenge him. According to the previous duels, this time, it should be Zhong Tai's side who sent out their people first. Elder Yan stroked his beard. Just now, Xian Yu had won a battle, so this battle against Zhong Tai was especially important. They had to win for sure. However, if they immediately sent out their sect's heroes, it would seem like they didn't have enough confidence. This person's status couldn't be too high, but his strength couldn't be too weak. There weren't many suitable people here. He didn't think for long before he came up with a plan. He turned to the person beside him and said, go and ask the young sect leader if there's anyone suitable. If there isn't, I'll find someone else. Elder Lin and Elder Bai exchanged glances. With Du Shixuan's temper, as long as he asked, there was no way he wouldn't agree. However, this person wasn't at the stage to go into battle yet, and he didn't have many capable people around him. If he lost, not only would his strength be exhausted, he would also lose face. If he won, it would be Elder Yan's strategy, and he would also be able to answer to sect leader Qiao. The 2 altars were only a few miles apart. The disciple quickly rushed to Du Shixuan's location and reported Elder Yan's words word for word. Du Shixuan laughed coldly and said, go back and tell Elder Yan that I'll take on this formation. Then, he looked down at Zhang Yan. However, before he could say anything, Xing Fuliu stepped forward and said, young sect leader, I'm willing to go. At the same time, he tilted his head and said to Zhang Yan, Jinren Zhang's transcendence energy is profound, it's better if you leave this formation to me. As he spoke, he kept cupping his hands at him. Zhang Yan smiled and said, since fellow Daoist Xing is willing, I will sit on the altar and wait for good news. Du Shixuan frowned. Of course, he wasn't afraid of Elder Yan asking him to make arrangements. Although there were only Zhang Yan and Xing Fuliu by his side, Zhang Yan was a second-layer Yuanian cultivator, and his transcendence energy was far superior to a first-layer cultivator. Moreover, he was invited from outside the sect, so it was appropriate for him to go. However, Xing Fuliu took the initiative to ask for help, so he couldn't disappoint him. However, he was also afraid that Xing Fuliu would lose, so he took out an item from his sleeve and tossed it over. He said, take this treasure to protect yourself. When Xing Fuliu caught it and circulated his spiritual energy, he knew that this treasure wasn't simple. He was overjoyed, bowed, and went up to the sky. He wasn't being impulsive, but he knew very well that it wasn't enough to just rely on flattery to stay under Du Shixuan's command. He might be able to get some small benefits, but if he wanted to be truly valued, he still had to show his own ability. Right now, both sides were just testing each other, and the battle wasn't intense yet. It seemed like the time for those with powerful combat abilities to go on the battlefield was still far away. If he fought now, he might have some chance of winning, but if he waited any longer, he would be seeking death. After he stood on the cloud, he said loudly, that Lan Jianguang is just now using sorcery to hurt people. It's not really a skill. I, Xing Fuliu, am here to ask for advice. May I ask Xian Yu cult, is there anyone willing to accept my challenge? After a while, someone also came out from the other side. As he expected, it wasn't a disciple of Xian Yu cult, but a cultivator in a blue robe with wide sleeves. He had thin eyebrows and fair skin, and a well-proportioned figure. He looked very delicate, and there was a sword with a phoenix head hanging on his waist. Judging from his robe alone, he wasn't from Xian Yu cult. Xing Fuliu's eyes were sharp, and he saw that the sword had a unique shape. The other party seemed to have some connection with Fengxiang Sword School, and he couldn't help but mutter to himself. His mind raced and he suddenly had an idea. He took out the magic treasure that Du Shixuan gave him and flashed it in his hand so that the other party could see it clearly. Then, he transmitted his voice and said, "Fellow Taoist, our cultivation levels are similar. If we have to fight, the one who wins will either die or be injured. Why don't we use another method?" After the blue-robed cultivator saw the Dharma treasure, he couldn't help but frown, and also transmitted his voice, "What do you want?" Xing Fuliu took out another pouch and said, "As long as fellow Taoist can take this Dharma treasure of mine, I will immediately admit defeat. I won't go back on my word." If the two sides weren't enemies, and they didn't want to fight to the death, this kind of battle was very common between cultivators. The blue-robed cultivator thought about it, and he felt that in front of the cultivators of the two sects, even if he didn't make a vow, he wasn't afraid of Xing Fuliu going back on his word. He also had a supreme treasure to protect himself, so he replied generously, "Fine, as you say." Xing Fuliu was secretly delighted, but he didn't show it on his face. He said, "Fellow Taoist, take it." He shook the pouch so that the mouth of the pouch was facing outwards. He raised his hand and caressed the pouch. The inside of the pouch instantly swelled up as if it was full of air. There was another ripple, and a ball of black wind evil chi was spat out. The blue-robed cultivator was on guard. He was also afraid that the other party would play tricks. If he felt that something was wrong, he would take the initiative to escape even if he had to admit defeat. However, when he saw that the black wind was powerful, it wouldn't be difficult for him to block it with his treasure. He couldn't help but make up his mind, and with a shake of his wrist, he took out a copper plate. The plate flipped in the air, and it reflected an auspicious light that covered his body. The black wind came over, whistling in the distance, but when it got close, it suddenly separated, like a ghost's hand or a devil's claw. It coiled around him like a whip, and it kept tightening. It gathered more and more, as if it was endless. However, the auspicious light did not diminish at all, and it was still bright like a star. When the blue-robed cultivator saw Xing Fuliu's method, he was relieved, and let him do as he pleased. Xing Fuliu looked carefully, and he made a judgment in his heart. Although this person dealt with it well, he didn't look like someone who was experienced in battle. He smiled slyly and thought to himself, "Dao Xing's luck isn't bad." He patted the pouch, and suddenly a black bird flew out. After it came out, it chirped twice at the other side, and then turned back. When the blue-robed cultivator heard the birds chirping, for some reason, his spiritual vigor was in a mess, as if he was about to fall from the sky. He was shocked, and he quickly tried to stabilize his body. Xing Fuliu was already waiting there, so how could he miss this opportunity? He activated his mana, and the boundless black wind squeezed toward the center, and in an instant, it crushed the auspicious light that no one was controlling. The blue-robed cultivator cried out in pain, and suddenly, his body turned into a swift sword ray, and in the blink of an eye, he tore the black wind apart, and went into the Xianyu formation. Xing Fuliu was stunned, and a trace of lingering fear arose in his heart. If this person didn't escape just now, and instead attacked him with a sword, he might not be able to block it. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead, and imitated what just now Lan Jianguang did, and bowed to Yang Shuyong. He didn't dare to stay any longer, and hurriedly returned to the spell altar. After he landed, he let out a breath, and bowed to Du Shixuan, and said with a smile, "Young sect master, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Chapter 686. Zhong Tai's side won around and regained quite a bit of face. Sect Master Qiao's expression also relaxed slightly. He asked, "Who invited that fellow Taoist just now?" This was a question he already knew the answer to. How could the disciples not know what he was thinking? They answered, reporting to sect leader, that spiritual master Xing was recruited by young sect leader. Madame Zhao said happily, "So it was Sun, who invited him." "Husband, you have to reward him." Sect leader Qiao nodded, "I didn't expect my son to have such foresight. Come, pass my order and give him my spring water ruler." How could anyone with a discerning eye not see that sect leader Qiao was deliberately trying to share some of the benefits with his son? But a victory was a victory, after all. Even though some of the elders were dissatisfied, they didn't step forward to stop him. At this moment, a disciple went up the spell altar and bowed. "Sect leader, Elder Yen sent someone to ask which mountain peak he wants." Sect leader Qiao thought carefully and pointed outside, "Send someone to pass the message. He wants the land under Xianyu sect." The disciple acknowledged the order loudly. Just now, Xianyu forced them to move their mountain peak. They were filled with anger and now was the time to take revenge. This news quickly spread to the Xianyu cult, but cult master Yang Shuyong was not surprised at all. He had an expression as if he had known this would happen. He said, "We have disgraced Zhong Tai. As expected, they want to get revenge." Elder Jin Ling flattered, "But this is within sect leader's spiritual master's calculations." However, Yang Shuyong repeatedly waved his hand. Although he appeared to be disdainful towards Zhong Tai on the surface, in reality, he did not truly underestimate his opponent. He said, "It's not that simple. The place we're standing on is the highest terrain in this mountain range. It can be said that all the other mountains are small in comparison. How could Zhong Tai allow us to occupy this place for long? He will definitely try to take it away." Xian Yu was prepared. There was no spell altar in the mountain, so it only took a short while. They moved to a different mountain peak. Just now that everything was settled, Yang Shuyong couldn't wait and ordered someone to challenge him. Immediately, a cultivator leaped into the air. Zhong Tai also sent someone up. However, the two of them were not disciples of the two sections. They knew that even if they expended a lot of effort to kill their opponents, the benefits they would obtain would be very little. Thus, they had a tacit understanding and dealt with each other a few times. Thus, they separated. It could be said that they were evenly matched. Yang Shuyong was displeased and sneered, "These outsiders are indeed unreliable." He turned around to look at Elder Jin Ling and said, "Guardian Jin Ling, who do you think you should send out for the next match?" How could Elder Jin Ling not know what he meant? He bowed and said, "Daoren is willing to come with us." Yang Shuyong said, "All right. Jin Ling, how about you bring back 3 heads this time?" Although it was a question, his tone was unyielding. There was no room for negotiation. The corners of the Golden Spirit Elder's eyes twitched slightly. Yang Shuyong's reputation in the sect was so great that he didn't dare to say anything. He said, "Daoren does not dare to disgrace the cult's prestige, I will do my best." On the other side of the stage, Elder Yen asked, "Who should go up?" Elder Lin flipped the book in his hand and pointed at a name. "This person is called Qin Shogu. He is a tactful person and has a good reputation among the cultivators. In my opinion, why don't we send him up this time?" Elder Yen Daoren said, "Junior brother, just arrange it." Elder Lin signaled to the boy beside him, "Go and pass the order." At this moment, Qin Shogu was chatting with a few people he was close to. After receiving the order from the boy, he didn't waste any time and flew up into the sky. He reported his name and waited patiently for his opponent. Not long later, he saw a streak of light slowly flying over. At first, he didn't pay much attention to it. However, when he saw who it was, his body shook and he cried out, "Elder Jinling?" Seeing that it was this person who came up, Elder Yen frowned and his gaze sharpened. Elder Lin, on the other hand, couldn't keep his cool and stood up in shock. "Why is it Elder Jinling, this Daoran?" Elder Bai shook his head. The Golden Spirit Elder was the great protector when he was the previous headmaster of Xianyu sect. Although he was not the most powerful in the Xianyu sect, he could be ranked in the top 3 in terms of fighting abilities. This Qin Shogu was most likely going to lose. At this moment, Qin Shogu was panicking. This person was a second Yuanying cultivator. Not only was his cultivation higher than Qin Shogu's, his cultivation technique was also Xianyu's, and he didn't lack any treasures. He was better than Qin Shogu in every aspect. He wanted to admit defeat, but he couldn't back down because of the previous contract. He could only bite the bullet and go forward. Qin Shogu greets Elder Jinling. Elder Jinling nodded and politely returned the greeting. "Fellow Daoist Qin, it has been more than 60 years since we parted at Radiant Pavilion. However, now that we have a different master, we can't care about our past friendship." Qin Shogu smiled bitterly. "This lowly Daoist has no choice, I can only learn from Elder's brilliance." After exchanging pleasantries, the two of them separated. Elder Jinling took out a golden hoop from his sleeve and threw it into the air. He made a hand sign and the hoop suddenly turned into hundreds of them. They all danced in the air, vibrating and whistling. They then turned down and smashed towards Qin Shogu's head. Qin Shogu was afraid of this Doran's name, so he was afraid before the battle even started. When he saw that Daoran used his famous treasure, the phantom hoop, he immediately dodged. He wasn't in the mood to fight with this person, so he planned to hold on for an hour before being defeated. His opponent's cultivation was much higher than his, so if he could hold on for that long, no one could say that he wasn't capable. He originally hoped that he could hold on for as long as he could, but the golden hoop seemed to have a mind of its own. It actually split up and chased after him, and more of them appeared. In just a moment, there were tens of thousands of them. In all directions, the sky and the earth were filled with the traces of these golden hoop. Although Qin Shogu knew that some of it was true, he originally hoped that he could hold on for as long as he could, but he didn't expect that his opponent's methods were even more powerful than the rumors said. If this continued, in less than a moment, he would have nowhere to run. He racked his brains for a countermeasure, but even after coming up with a few ideas, they were all rejected. Looking at Elder Jinling's murderous appearance, it seemed that if he could take his life, he wouldn't hold back. Thinking of this, anger rose in his heart. He took out a purple bead from his sleeve and held it tightly in his palm. This object was called the purple halo bead. In the past, he inadvertently obtained a half-inch long purple thunder wood. It took him dozens of years and a few of his best friends to refine it. Because it wasn't easy to obtain this thunder bead, there were only 7 of them, so he regarded it as a life-saving treasure. Ever since he refined it, he had never used it. However, although this object was powerful, if the opponent was too far away when he used it, there would be enough time for him to dodge. There would also be enough time to dodge, so it was best to use it in close proximity. After Qin Shogu made up his mind, he set up a few traps and showed off his flaws in an attempt to trick Elder Jinling to come forward. However, this Daoran was unusually shrewd and ruthless. He didn't care about Qin Shogu's attempts at baiting the enemy. Instead, he was almost caught up by the golden hoop a few times. Qin Shogu's successive schemes were to no avail. He couldn't help but feel dispirited. At this moment, he didn't have enough strength, so his escape light couldn't help but slow down. However, this moment of carelessness gave Elder Jinling an opportunity. His eyes shone brightly and he suddenly shouted. Thousands of golden hoops suddenly rushed forward. In an instant, it was like rain, continuously smashing onto his protective treasure light. Although some of it was true, after a few hits, Qin Shogu couldn't take it anymore. However, he was also angry. He secretly clenched his teeth and said, "Do you think I'm afraid of you? Since you're bullying me like this, don't blame me for fighting you to the death." He took out a blood-red pill and stuffed it into his mouth, hurriedly chewing it a few times. After swallowing it, thousands of spiritual lights appeared around his body, merging with the protective treasure light. His entire body seemed to have shrunk into a ball of thick fat. His figure gradually faded away, and anyone who looked at him would be able to see him. Anyone who looked at it would be blurry. When Elder Bai saw this, he shook his head and said, "The three evil sects are really poisonous. I didn't think that there would still be so many of such evil things." In the past, although the three evil sects were wiped out one by one, the celestial cities around couldn't be taken down in a short period of time. As such, many of the items that the evil sects refined were spread out. Some of the items that the large sects didn't want were taken by the small sections. Just now, Chen Shogu was using the protective treasure that Fu Yang sect refined. Elder Jin Ling's brows rose up. He also recognized the origin of this pill, but he revealed a sneer. This treasure pill was indeed not easy to break through, but the person who used it would find it hard to fly. He had many ways to deal with it. He casually summoned the golden rings from all around, and with a point of his finger, he actually put them on Chinshogu's protective treasure light. If the treasure light resisted, he would slowly retreat. However, if he sensed that the treasure light was retreating, he would tighten his strength. After going back and forth for a while, Chinshogu felt that he had used up a lot of his magic power and felt tired. However, he still gritted his teeth and held on. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Elder Jin Ling. He held the lightning bead in his hand and waited for the moment that Elder Jin Ling let down his guard. After another moment, the treasure light around him couldn't take it anymore and gradually faded. He knew that if he didn't act now, he wouldn't have another chance. He suddenly threw out the 7 lightning beads. However, even at this moment, Elder Jin Ling still didn't lose his caution. Seeing that something was flying at him, he didn't try to block it. He waved his sleeve and instantly escaped into the distance with a gust of astral wind. When the lightning bead landed on empty air, it immediately exploded. Fire and lightning shot out. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. Even the nearby mountains collapsed, causing the people below to cry out in surprise. Elder Jin Ling's expression also changed slightly. He didn't think that his opponent had hidden such a powerful lightning bead. Just now, if he was careless, he might be defeated. Chinshogu saw that he didn't injure the person at all and was disappointed. Taking advantage of the fact that the person had escaped far away and was unable to control the golden rings, Chinshogu forced out all of his Fa Li and pushed it back a little. Then, he used the astral wind to escape. But he hadn't gone far when the golden hoop suddenly spun in the air. In the distance, Chinshogu had actually traversed 1,000 feet in an instant and was closing in. The golden hoop spun again and traversed another 1,000 feet. After 3 consecutive spins, it had already caught up to him. Then, he made a hand sign and all the golden rings flew up together, trapping Chinshogu once again. Chinshogu was like a turtle in a jar at this moment and had no strength to resist anymore. He begged for mercy, "Elder Jin Ling, please spare my life." Elder Jin Ling's expression was cold and he didn't care at all. He activated his Fa Li and the golden rings instantly closed. Chinshogu screamed and was instantly minced into countless pieces of meat. Even so, Elder Jin Ling wasn't willing to let him go. He waved his hand and a bolt of astral lightning destroyed the escaping origin spirit. There was no joy or sorrow on his face, as if he had done something normal. He looked down and said coldly, "Who wants to fight again? P.S. Just now, the battery tripped. I haven't used it for a long time, so I couldn't find it. When I opened it, I found that a lot of it was missing, so I had to recode it." Chapter 687. Just now, when Elder Jin Ling showed up, the elders from Zhongtai knew that Chinshogu was no match for him. Elder Bai said in a deep voice, "Jin Ling has mastered the art of teleportation. Even though he used a Dharma artifact to cultivate the illusion necklace to this level, there are very few people in the same generation who can do it. It's a pity that perfected cultivator Qin died. He felt pity for Chinshogu. Chinshogu knew how to read people's expressions and knew when to advance and when to retreat. Among the cultivators he recruited, Chinshogu's cultivation was not bad. Initially, he wanted to make Chinshogu his confidant. As long as he won a battle, he could arrange for Chinshogu to manage an immortal city. However, Chinshogu's luck was bad and he met Elder Jinling. He gave it another thought. Everyone knew that Chinshogu was close to him, so he had to express his gratitude. So he stood up and took the initiative to request for battle. Senior brother, not to mention this old Taoist's Tao art is profound, he's extremely shrewd and isn't someone an ordinary person can deal with. I'm willing to go up for a while. Elder Yen thought for a while and said, there is no rush. I have other plans. Send another person to fight him. His cultivation should not be too high. Elder Bai was startled. Elder Jinling was a level 2 cultivator. Wasn't sending someone to fight him on purpose. However, he trusted Elder Yen and did not ask for the reason. He only hesitated and asked, Senior Martial Brother, if we lose another battle, the sect master, Elder Yen tilted his head and looked at him. As long as the person who loses is not from Zhongtai sect, the sect master will not say anything. Go make the arrangements. I will tell you in detail when you come back. Elder Bai could only keep his questions to himself and went to make the arrangements. Not long after, 2 rays of light flew up from the altar and went to meet them. After a while, Elder Bai returned to the altar and explained, those are the 2 brothers, Qi Gu and Qi Liang. They are Damo Immortal City's Lord Hong Ying's disciples. Just now, these 2 came up to fight me. I thought it was not against Senior Martial Brother's instructions, so I went with the flow. Yen Changfeng Daoren, you did very well, these 2 are very suitable. Seeing that Elder Bai still didn't understand this arrangement, he said, you don't have to be confused. I just want to see what Xian Yu's intention is in drawing the mountain as a boundary. After these few matches, we'll be able to see the answer. Victory or defeat is secondary. Only then did Elder Bai come to a realization. He said in admiration, Senior brother is really thoughtful. I am far inferior to you. Meanwhile, within the Paleo flying carriage, Madame Zhao looked at the Qi brothers and frowned, why are these 2 here? Sect leader Qiao asked in surprise, does Madame recognize him? Madame Zhao said, these 2 were originally disciples of the Fengxiang sword school, but later on they violated the school's rules. Because of our past friendship, we didn't take their lives. After chasing the magic sword back, I chased it out. I originally thought that it was hiding in another continent, who would have thought that it came to me, Zhongtai. Sect leader Qiao said, since they are expelled, they are no longer disciples of the Phoenix clan. I can even tolerate people from the heretical sections. Not to mention these 2. The Qi brothers went up to the clouds. The big brother Qi Gu walked up and bowed, saying, Guardian Jinling. Both of us will fight you in this formation. If you think it's fair, you can find another person. We will wait here. The 2 of them weren't twins. There was a difference of 10 years. Qi Gu was middle-aged. His face was square and steady. Qi Liang, on the other hand, was different. His eyes were spirited and his face was sharp. When the former spoke, he didn't say a word. He just stared at Elder Jinling without blinking. Elder Jinling glanced over and saw that the 2 brothers each had a magic sword with beads hanging from their waists. He had a rough idea of what was going on, so he lowered his eyes and said, there's no need. You 2 can start now. The Qi brothers didn't stand on ceremony. They shouted and immediately split up. One on the left and one on the right, they formed a pincer. Almost at the same time, they made hand signs. With 2 clangs, 2 rays of light flew out of their scabbards and slashed towards Elder Jinling. They wanted to kill him right from the start. Elder Jinling looked calm and relaxed, but deep in his heart, he didn't dare to be careless at all. This time, he didn't take out the golden ring. Instead, he grabbed it with both hands and shook it. Countless rays of golden light appeared and covered the sky. It was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. When the people from the two sects saw this, they felt that it was dazzling. They had no choice but to use hand signs to protect their eyes. But even so, it was still difficult to see the situation in the sky clearly. The Chi brothers were originally very confident. In a battle between cultivators, unless there was a huge difference in their battle strength, it would be easy for others to find their flaws if their Tao techniques and divine arts were known. Therefore, cultivators usually wouldn't easily reveal their strength in front of others. On the other hand, the Golden Spirit Elder and Qin Shogu had revealed many techniques when they were fighting. The two of them had already discussed a strategy to deal with their enemy. However, when they were illuminated by this sudden light, they were stunned for a moment. When the two swords descended, they slashed empty air, causing them to curse in their hearts. If they were still holding the magic sword that they had refined their whole life, even if they didn't deliberately control it, they could kill the enemy with just a thought. But when they were chased out of the sect, the sword was taken by Fengxiang Sword School. Otherwise, they wouldn't need to care about this mere ray of light. At this moment, when they were about to take it back, they felt a suction force from below, as if the magic sword was stuck to it. They immediately panicked and used hand signs to summon it back. But after a moment of stalemate, they felt that their hearts were empty. They actually lost contact with their minds. They were shocked and knew that it was not good. The two of them looked at each other and fled in different directions. At this moment, a golden ring suddenly flew out from the light and went straight for Qi Gu. At the same time, Elder Jin Ling appeared from the ring. In a few breaths, he caught up to him. Qi Gu had no choice but to turn around to face the enemy. But after losing the magic sword, his battle strength was greatly reduced. He barely managed to block a few rounds before he lost his order. He was hit in the chest by the ring. In an instant, his bones were fractured and he fell from the sky. When Elder Jin Ling wanted to turn around to look for Qi Liang, the latter had already flown into the Jinzhong sect's formation. He couldn't catch up in time and could only give up. Elder Yen saw that Qi Liang was coming over, and his eyes revealed some coldness. He said, "Running away from battle, how can we let you off so easily?" Elder Lin immediately understood. He took out the indenture from his bosom and shone it in the air. Qi Liang immediately obeyed the oath. His entire body went limp and he fell from the sky. His head hit the altar. Because his mana was restricted by the indenture, he actually fell to his death. Seeing this scene, many cultivators felt a chill in their hearts. Old man Jin Ling was also startled, but he had already defeated 3 people in a row, so he felt that he should be able to answer to Yang Shuyong. He waved his hand and threw out 3 talismans, which went towards the 3 mountains. He cupped his hands towards the flying carriage and said, "Sect Master Qiao. The place where the talisman falls is where I, Xian Yu, will go. I will take my leave now." After saying that, he waved his sleeve and flew away. He went all the way back to the Xianyu formation. When he reached the foot of the mountain, a Taoist boy came down and stopped him. He couldn't help but say angrily, "Why didn't you let me go up?" The Taoist boy said, "Sect leader said that Guardian Jin Ling was supposed to bring back 3 heads. However, I only managed to kill 2 people. Protector, please go back and fight again. I wish for a perfect ending." Elder Jin Ling was furious. But he couldn't go against the sect leader, so he had no choice but to go back. Ever since the 3 talisman floated away, Elder Yen had been watching attentively, waiting for them to land. He slowly stood up from his seat and went to the edge of the altar. His eyes were filled with a strange light as he said, "The mountains as chess pieces." "Humph. In your dreams." On the other altar, Zhang Yan saw this scene. He couldn't help but nod and said, "Indeed." Xing Fuliu heard his words and also came over to take a look. But after looking for a long time, he didn't find anything, so he cupped his hands and asked, Taoist Zhang, what did you see? Can you tell me? Zhang Yan laughed and said, why not? Speaking of which, it has something to do with you and me. He pointed and said, come to think of it, it's nothing special. There are 6 tall hills outside where we're staying, and they're all connected to each other. As long as we occupy these 6 hills, it's the same as trapping us within. Xian Yu occupied one earlier, and now 4 more have fallen into his hands. Now, we're only missing 2 more, and we'll be able to close our doors. Xing Fuliu originally thought that he had some brilliant insight, but after hearing those words, he didn't think much of it. He said, we are cultivators of the profound, we can fly through the sky and burrow through the earth. If we want to leave, do you really think these few hills can stop us? Zhang Yan said, if not, according to the rules of the battle, the disciples of Zhong Tai cannot fly into the places that Xian Yu occupies. Are you thinking of giving up? Also, if Xian Yu occupies these 6 hills and sets up an altar in formation, he will be in an invincible position. Even if he loses, there is nothing to fear. When the time comes, he will block the way out and no one will be able to get out. Xing Fuliu wasn't stupid and immediately thought of this key point. His face couldn't help but turn pale. At the side, Du Shixuan's expression changed slightly when he heard this. He stood up and said, fellow Taoist Zhang's words are reasonable. We have to guard against this matter. I'll go talk to father. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a rumble on the spell altar and he flew away. Xing Fuliu didn't say what he thought. Taoist Zhang saw through the plan, it must be a great merit. Zhang Yan smiled and said, Xian Yu's intention is clear when he occupies these 3 hills. Anyone with eyes can see it. Sect leader Qiao, as the leader of a sect, why do you need I to remind you? Sure enough, it didn't take long for Du Shixuan to turn around. His expression looked much more relaxed as he said, so father was already prepared. I was worried for nothing. He then looked at Zhang Yan and cupped his hands, saying, however, I still have to thank Master Zhang for your kind reminder. Zhang Yan returned the courtesy. Don't mention it. I was just talking nonsense. Don't take it seriously. While the two were talking, a golden light suddenly appeared in the sky. Xian Yu sent someone to challenge him again. Du Shixuan looked up and saw that it was Elder Jin Ling who came back. He immediately said angrily, why is this old man here again? Is he trying to bully my Zhong Tai? He waved his hand at a disciple beside him and said, go to the sect leader and tell him that I want to go into battle. Seeing that Du Shixuan was in a hurry, the disciple didn't even care about etiquette and flew away. But after he left, he didn't come back. Du Shixuan was quite impatient. He wanted to ignore the order and kill this person first. But just as he moved, he saw a ray of light coming from afar and landed in front of him. It was a servant girl in a yellow dress. She curtsied and said, young master, madam has said that Rong Juanzhong is the real enemy of our sect. Before this person shows himself, it's better for you to be patient, lest others find out about us. Du Shixuan said impatiently, who are you? I don't know you. Get lost, otherwise don't blame me for being merciless. The servant girl didn't panic. She showed something in her hand and said, Madam's golden hairpin is here. Young sect leader, do you recognize it? Du Shixuan's expression changed a few times. Finally, he snorted and sat down heavily. There was a rumbling sound and the whole altar shook. Xing Fuliu looked at Zhang Yan. He thought for a while and said, young sect leader, you have an important task and can't go. But we can't let Xian Yu be so arrogant. I think that Taoist Zhang's cultivation is profound and similar to Elder Jin Ling's. Why don't young sect leader ask him to go into battle? Chapter 688. Seeing that she had successfully dissuaded Du Shixuan, the maidservant did not care what he had to say. She threw down the golden hairpin and immediately returned to the carriage to report. Welcome to the reading. When Madame Zhao heard her report, she was relieved. After all, Du Shixuan could not reveal his family's methods yet, lest Rong Juanzhong be wary of him. She raised her delicate head and coldly sized up the golden spirit elder who was flying in the sky. She frowned and said, "Husband, this person is really detestable. He actually came back to challenge us. He's really going too far. Why don't you ask Elder Yen to fight him?" Leader Qiao seemed to be tempted, but after some thought, he shook his head and said, "Elder Yen is an honorable person. It is not appropriate to make a move." Madame Zhao was slightly annoyed and said, "Then what should we do? The old man Jin Ling has fought 2 rounds in a row, but he doesn't seem to be tired at all. The only people in our sect who can defeat him are my husband, Sun, fellow Taoist Hui Xian, Elder Yen, and a few others. If he doesn't go, he won't let Sun, and fellow Taoist Hui Xian go." Leader Qiao said lightly, "Then just send anyone. As long as it is not a cultivator from Zhongtai, it will be fine." Madame Zhao was shocked. How can he win? Sect Master Qiao snorted and sneered, "According to what I know, that Yang Shuyong has been trying to get rid of the Golden Spirit Elder for a long time. Now, it seems like he wants to use me to get rid of him. How can I let him have his way?" Madame Zhao hesitated and said, "But husband, this battle is very important. If we don't win and lose, we will be trapped in the mountains." Leader Qiao held her hand and said, "If Xian Yu wins again, the next person to fight will be Rong Juanzhong. At that time, I can ask Sun, to go and we will know the result in one battle. There is no need to drag others into this. It will also help Zhongtai preserve some of its strength." Zhongtai was not as good as before. He did not want to see even one of their cultivators die. The key to this battle was still Rong Juanzhong. If Du Shixuan could defeat him, then there would be no more suspense in this battle. The cultivators from the 2 sects could not continue fighting to the death. Madame Zhao couldn't help but say, "Husband, you put all the pressure on Sun, Isn't this too much?" However, sect leader Qiao remained silent. Madame Zhao sighed and said, "All right, since this is my husband's arrangement, I will naturally comply. However, just now, Sun has requested to fight and we cannot let him down. He has a Taoist Zhang under him, who is also a second-stage cultivator. This person had once defeated Taoist Hui Xian's disciple, so his cultivation should not be shallow. Why don't we send him up?" Sect leader Qiao nodded in approval. "Since there is such a person, we can order him to fight against the enemy." At this moment, on another altar, Elder Bai had been waiting for a long time, but no one came forward to fight the Golden Spirit Elder. He said anxiously, "Senior Martial Brother, why don't I deal with this person?" This was the second time he had asked to fight, but Elder Yen silently thought about it and still didn't agree. He said firmly, "Junior Martial Brother Bai, your opponent is Chunyu Ji, not this person. Otherwise, why would you have hidden your cultivation for so many years? Wouldn't all his efforts be wasted? This person, let me deal with him." Elder Bai was shocked. "Senior Martial Brother is the great elder of the school, how can you deal with him so easily?" Elder Yen laughed and said, "The Golden Spirit Elder is also the Xian Yu School's guardian elder. If he can fight, why can't I?" Just as he was about to stand up, he heard a tremor from afar. He couldn't help but be surprised and stopped. Elder Bai tilted his head and looked. He realized that the movement came from the altar where Du Shixuan was. He said in surprise, "Could it be that Du Shixuan wants to fight?" Elder Yen shook his head and said, "Rong Juanzhong hasn't shown up yet, the sect leader will not allow him to fight with others." As he spoke, a dazzling ray of light shot up from the altar with a force that could tear the clouds apart. It went straight into the clouds and stood opposite the Golden Spirit Elder. After Elder Bai saw it, he relaxed slightly and returned to his seat. He smiled and said, "So it's Priest Zhang. This person is suitable. In terms of cultivation, he's about the same as the Golden Spirit Elder. Even if he can't win, he should be able to contend with him." Elder Yen looked over and stroked his beard. He said, "I've heard of this person before. He seems to have had some conflict with Hui Xian. He should have some ability. Elder Lin sneered at the side. If this person dies, it's not bad. It'll let others know that following that kid won't end well. On the other side, at the Xianyu cult, sect master Yang Shuyong's interest was piqued when he saw Zhang Yan enter the battle. He pointed at the foot of the mountain and said, "Who do you think will win this battle?" Someone below said, "The Golden Spirit Protector has cultivated for almost 1,000 years, and the fantasy fault hoop has been refined to the divine connection realm. Even if that person has some background, how can he be the Protector's opponent?" Chunyu Ji answered cautiously, "That person is of the same lineage as Shen Baishuang, so he is not a mediocre fighter. It's just that the Golden Spirit Protector has the ring escape space shift technique. Even if the battle is disadvantageous, he can retreat in time. This one thinks that the chances of victory and defeat are 50-50. After Zhang Yan stood still in the clouds, he cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist Jin Ling, please." The Golden Spirit Elder saw Zhang Yan come up and examined him. He suddenly said harshly, "So it's Zhang Jinren of the Deep Abyss sect. One of my Xianyu school's elders was killed by Shen Baishuang. Right now, I can't find Shen Daoist's whereabouts. I've long heard that you are of the same lineage as him, so I'll take your head back to worship." Zhang Yan was slightly surprised and then laughed. He bowed and said, "Many thanks to Golden Spirit Friend for telling you that we are enemies. Since that's the case, I definitely can't let you go. I'll do my best to take your life." Even though he was smiling and talking normally, his words were filled with murderous intent. The Golden Spirit Elder felt a strange coldness on his body. He quickly calmed his mind and said sarcastically, "What a big tone. It's still unknown who will kill you." Although he said it as if he had the upper hand, he didn't relax at all. He waved his sleeves and retreated dozens of feet. He then took out the golden rings that were refined by his heart. With a thought, many golden rings that were exactly the same appeared and scattered in the sky. As he activated his mysterious technique, the golden rings became denser and denser. At first glance, there were at least tens of thousands of them. They intertwined with each other and it was hard to tell what was real and what was fake. He had refined a total of 512 illusionary palace rings. Only the main ring that was connected to his mind was one. It was also the most powerful. When he fought, he hid in the secondary rings and the illusionary rings, waiting for an opportunity to attack the enemy. Other than that, he could also fly in any of the rings, making it hard for the enemy to guard against him. As long as the enemy was careless, they would lose their life. After he finished using the rings, he pointed with his finger and a golden light flew out. Zhang Yan had seen the Golden Spirit Elder fight just now and had a general understanding of this person's methods. He already had a plan to defeat the enemy. It wasn't difficult to defeat this person, but to take his life, it would take a lot of effort. Xianyu had seized the 4 mountains and had the geographical advantage. For the cultivators in the Zhongtai area, flying in the air was greatly restricted. If the Golden Spirit Elder felt something was wrong, he could immediately hide inside. In this short period of time, even if he had the sword escape technique, he wouldn't be able to catch up and kill the enemy in time. Therefore, once he attacked, he would have to find a way to kill the enemy. At this moment, when he saw the golden rings coming, he didn't dodge and allowed them to fall. The Golden Spirit Elder was stunned at first, but then he was overjoyed. He quickly chanted and replaced the rings. As long as he could trap the enemy, he would be able to strangle him to death like Chinshogu. At this time, Zhang Yanqing let out a shout, and a 5-colored light suddenly appeared behind him. After a flash, a green light suddenly climbed up, and it was full of vitality. It kept the falling golden ring 3 feet away, and no matter how hard it buzzed and tried to restrain it, it couldn't force its way in. Ever since the Golden Spirit Elder refined the Illusion Palace rings, he had never seen someone who could catch the rings without using magic treasures. He couldn't help but be shocked. His expression fluctuated a few times, and with a wave of his hand, the tens of thousands of golden rings in the sky moved in unison, converging towards Zhang Yan from all directions. When Zhang Yan saw this, he smiled slightly. The green light behind him shone brightly, and in an instant, it split into tens of thousands of rays of light. It looked like a giant tree that reached the heavens. It extended its branches and tendrils, twisting, and every branch locked onto a ring. The Golden Spirit Elder's expression changed dramatically. He kept activating his cultivation method, creating rings within rings and dividing chi within chi. However, with every ring, there would be an additional green light within the green light. Whether it was real or illusionary, it would all be blocked outside. In the end, the sky was filled with green light. Not only that, the green light spread outwards, causing him to have no choice but to consume his Fa Li to resist it. As a result, he fell into a battle of Fa Li that he was least proficient in. Zhang Yan's Fa Li was extremely strong. Among those of the same generation, there were very few who could fight against him. At this moment, when he activated his Fa Li, it was like an endless tide that surged towards him. The Golden Spirit Elder only lasted for a while before he felt that he couldn't suppress it anymore. First, the golden rings that filled the sky continuously disappeared and dissipated into spiritual energy. Then, the secondary rings broke one after another. In less than 10 breaths, more than half of the rings were destroyed. The Golden Spirit Elder's body was covered in cold sweat. He was shocked and thought to himself, what cultivation method does this Taoist cultivate? How can his Fa Li be so strong? Even compared to Sage Rong, he's probably not much weaker. He knew that if this continued, he would definitely exhaust all of his Fa Li. At that time, he wouldn't even be able to escape. Instantly, the thought of retreating arose in his mind. At this moment, the thought of taking revenge for his fellow sect members had already been tossed far away. Zhang Yan immediately sensed his retreat. He sneered and let out a loud shout. First, he retracted some of his magic power and allowed the golden rings to return. Then, he shook his arms and the wood elemental true light around him suddenly surged. With a cracking sound, the golden rings on his body shattered. At the same time, the golden rings that filled the sky also fell to the ground. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared from his original position. When the golden rings that he refined with his heart's blood were broken, the Golden Spirit Elder felt as if he was struck by lightning. A mouthful of blood surged up and he spat it out. Fortunately, his mind was still clear. Almost at the instant he felt that something was wrong, he had already circulated his technique with the intention of escaping. However, right at this moment, an enormous force surged over and actually forcefully pressed him down on the spot. His body trembled abruptly before he spat out a mouthful of blood once more. Terror appeared on his face as he cried out involuntarily. The Heavenlock restriction, he hadn't finished speaking when Zhang Yan had already appeared out of thin air and arrived before him. Clang! Zhang Yan drew the sword on his waist before suddenly swinging it down. A clear radiance flashed in the sky before a head shot into the sky. Zhang Yan stretched out his hand and caught the head. When he glanced at it, his face still carried a slight expression of astonishment and disbelief. He laughed with ridicule before flicking his sleeve with a swish and lifting the head up, and then he rode the strong cloud back down. Chapter 689. From the moment Zhang Yan teleported to the front of the Golden Spirit Elder, to pulling out his sword and decapitating him, it was all in the blink of an eye. Only when he returned with the head did everyone react. Du Shixuan suddenly stood up from his seat. His eyes flickered with divine lights, and his face was filled with excitement. He glanced at the few elders around the altar with disdain, and then he started laughing loudly. Xing Fuliu, who was sitting beside him, was even more dumbfounded and could only stare blankly. Elder Yan's movements paused, he held onto his beard and did not move. After a long while, he shook his head and said, I made a mistake. Elder Lin and Elder Bai's faces were filled with shock and surprise. Not mentioning the position of the Golden Spirit Elder in Xianyu sect, just by looking at how he easily defeated the 3 people, used the 10,000 rings to cover the sky, and easily traveled through the air, one could tell how powerful he was. But such a person still died in the hands of Zhang Yan in the blink of an eye. Just how powerful was the latter? Sect Master Qiao stared blankly. He'd originally given up on this battle and was prepared to wait for the next battle to decide the outcome. But he'd never imagined that the Golden Spirit Elder would actually be killed by a single sword strike from Zhang Yan, and this huge contrast caused him to be momentarily speechless. Madame Zhao, who was beside him, could not take it anymore and pushed him lightly, saying, "Husband, Zhang Jinren won, he should be rewarded handsomely." Sect leader Qiao then came to his senses and nodded, "Right, right. Someone come, pass on my order. Zhang Jinren killed an elder of Xianyu, according to the gifts, he will be rewarded, and also a celestial city." Madame Zhao said again, "The Golden Spirit Elder is the great protector of Xianyu, he is not an ordinary person. Husband, why don't you invite Zhang Jinren to the carriage for a chat?" Sect Master Qiao had already calmed down. To be able to win a round against Xianyu. To be able to win against Xianyu and get rid of the great protector, it was not a bad thing. He said cheerfully, "Madam is right, I have been negligent. Pass on the order, invite Zhang Jinren to the carriage." 10 miles away from the carriage, there was a lonely altar. This was where Hui Xian Elder and his disciples were at. Because Hui Xian Elder did not like noise and he was not under Zhongtai, there was a distance between them. At that moment, he was standing next to Luo Dongchuan. After a while, he slowly withdrew his gaze and said, "Old man Jinling has indeed lost." Luo Dongchuan wasn't surprised at all. He sneered and said, "I've said it before." Zhang Yan was one of the top 10 disciples of Qinsong. A first-grade golden core was formed. Within 100 years, he had mastered the Yuanying technique and was the #1 swordsman of the Donghua 16 sects. That old man was able to exchange 2 blows with him. It's not bad. Hui Xian old forefather frowned and thought for a while before saying, "With this kind of person around, it will be disadvantageous to our plans." Only when Zhong Tai was weak would he have the confidence to convince sect leader Qiao to let the Python tribe in. With Zhang Yan around, Zhong Tai's chances of winning would undoubtedly increase, and this was not what he wanted to see. Luo Dongchuan lowered his head and pondered for a moment before saying, "There's still no news from my eldest brother, so we'll have to endure it for now. I'd also like to advise fellow Taoist, it's best if your disciple doesn't provoke this person." Hui Xian old forefather said indifferently, "There's no need for fellow Taoist Luo to worry about this. As for how to teach my son, Daoren, know what to do." Luo Dongchuan said indifferently, "I'm just reminding you out of goodwill. Whether you take it or not, it's all up to you." In order to deal with Zhang Yan, the Python tribe had already sent messengers to the Middle Pillar continent to invite Fierce to take action. Before there was any news from the tribe, he didn't want to fight with them. If it wasn't for the fact that Hui Xian and Luo Dongchuan could be considered allies and still be of use to the Python tribe before they succeeded, he wouldn't have bothered to say another word. It would be best if he just let Luo Dongchuan fight until his head bled. At this moment, Zhang Yan had already returned to the altar. When his feet touched the ground, he threw the head in his hands onto the ground and bowed to Du Shixuan. "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Du Shixuan laughed loudly and came up to him. He held his arm and shook it forcefully. Fellow Taoist Zhang beheaded the enemy with 1 strike. How awesome! Xing Fuliu, on the other hand, squeezed out a smile and also came up to congratulate him. Fellow Taoist Zhang has made a great contribution and will definitely be appreciated by the sect master. At this moment, a Taoist boy came over and said, "The sect master has an order to invite Master Zhang to Pu Lao flying carriage for a chat." Du Shixuan laughed again and said, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, this is a good thing. I'll go with you." He then took half a step forward and said in a low voice, "I wonder where the primordial spirit of old Jinling is? Could it be that fellow Taoist released him?" Zhang Yan smiled and raised his sword. He placed 2 fingers on the sword's ridge and lightly drew a line. The cold light was like water, reflecting the reflection of a mirror. Inside the mirror, there was a distorted silhouette drifting back and forth. He said, "Old Jinling's primordial spirit is here. As the great guardian of Xianyu, he must know a lot of secrets. Capture him and give him to Master Zhang as a big gift. Du Shixuan glanced at Zhang Yan. After getting his permission, he took out the sword and looked at it. Not only was the blade sharp, there was also a bloody glow around it. It was obvious that it had drunk a lot of blood. The killing intent was so strong that it made his eyes hurt. It was a rare weapon. He couldn't help but show a strange light in his eyes. He praised, "Good sword." Zhang Yan chuckled and took off the scabbard. He handed it to Du Shixuan and said, "If fellow Taoist Du likes it, I'll give it to you." He had obtained this magic sword from an elder of the Blood Soul sect during the competition between the 16 sects. Even though it wasn't a supreme treasure, it had the ability to capture and absorb souls. The Golden Spirit Elder had been killed by his sword, and his origin spirit had been sucked into the magic sword, unable to escape. He still had quite a few magic swords like this. He didn't have any use for them, so he gave them away without blinking. Du Shixuan was startled, but he quickly took it and put it back into the scabbard. He said, "Since it's a gift from fellow Taoist Zhang, I'll accept it." Xing Fuliu was filled with jealousy. It seemed like Zhang Yan was giving him a sword, but even he could tell that with Du Shixuan's temper, he would never take advantage of others. When the time came, he would definitely pay back tenfold. Thinking about how Zhang Yan had already obtained a celestial city, and who knew what other benefits he would get later, Xing Fuliu's eyes turned red. Unlike Zhong Tai, the atmosphere at Xianyu sect was oppressive. Sect Master Yang Shuyong stared at the headless corpse that his disciple brought back. He was silent for a long time with a gloomy face. No one noticed that his hands, which were hidden in his sleeves, were trembling slightly. Even though his original intention was to borrow Zhong Tai's hand to get rid of the Golden Spirit Elder, he was secretly delighted that he didn't get rid of this person. Instead, he became more irritated. At this moment, he raised his head and said, "Which one of you wants to tell me what kind of technique that Taoist Zhang used? Mo Shirtong, didn't you boast that you are knowledgeable? I'll let you tell me." The protector elder who was named paused. He stammered, "Sect Master, when that Taoist Shin used his technique, the clouds surged and the water flowed, and the tides swirled. But this person seemed to be different." Before he could finish, Yang Shuyong interrupted him coldly, "Don't waste your breath." The protector elder could only shut his mouth awkwardly. After a long time, someone said in a low voice, "This kind of technique, I've never heard of it." Hearing this, Yang Shuyong suddenly said angrily, "You're all a bunch of trash. This person has such a technique, why did no one report it to me?" Everyone lowered their heads and didn't dare to breathe too loudly. They didn't know why he was angry. Only the commanding elder, Chunyu Ji, could guess the reason. In terms of cultivation level, few in the sect could compare to the Golden Spirit Elder. If this Taoist Zhang could kill this elder, it meant that he could kill others, even Yang Shuyong. With such an unexpected variable appearing, it was no wonder that the sect master lost his composure. At this moment, a deep voice came from behind, "This person's cultivation level is not low. In our sect, there are very few who can match up to him. Sect Master, don't worry. If we meet again, if this person dares to show himself, I will deal with him." As soon as this person spoke, the protector elders on both sides immediately showed respect and made a path for him. A tall cultivator with an imposing appearance walked over. This person wore a wide robe with a bird's crown on his head. As he walked, there seemed to be wind and thunder following him. His eyes were like lightning, frightening people's souls. With one look, one could tell that he was a hero among men. When Yang Shuyong saw this person, he retracted his imposing manner and said happily, "Jinren Rong has come out of seclusion." Rong Juanzhong walked over and looked around. Everyone avoided his gaze. He cupped his hands at Yang Shuyong and said, "Just now, I have gained something. Thank you, Sect Master, for worrying about me." Yang Shuyong carefully looked at his face and couldn't help but say happily, "Jinren Rong's cultivation has indeed improved." When Rong Juanzhong came to Sleeping Star Mountain with the cultivators of Xianyu, he seemed to have suddenly understood something. After giving a few simple instructions, he opened up a cave abode and went into seclusion. At that time, Xian Yu sect was also very nervous. Fortunately, at this moment, not only was he fine, he seemed to have gained some sort of comprehension. This was very exciting. Although Yang Shuyong was the head of the sect, the reason why he could sit in this position was related to Rong Juanzhong's support. Thus, he treated him differently from others. He was very polite and asked for guidance. Now that I, Xian Yu sect, lost for a while, according to Jinren Rong's opinion, what should we do now? Originally, the 6 mountains were sealed, but after Zhang Yan won for a while, he broke an opening. If they wanted to seal it again, it wouldn't be as simple as taking 1 or 2 mountains. Although it wasn't impossible, Zhong Tai wouldn't sit and wait for death. The difficulty would definitely increase. Rong Juanzhong didn't answer immediately. He seemed to be thinking of a solution. After a while, he said, "Just now, I have come out of seclusion and want to find someone to test my divine power on. I will accept the challenge, but before that, I have something to do." This 3rd-level cultivator of Yuanying was very important in the sect. Jinren He also thought that he was the most likely person to become a grotto heaven after him and inherit the orthodoxy of Xian Yu. Thus, Yang Shuyong attached great importance to him. He quickly said, "Jinren, please speak." Rong Juanzhong said seriously, "Just now, I saw Daoist Zhang's sword light up and took away Jinling Guardian's primordial spirit. Chief has to redeem the elder's head and primordial spirit, otherwise, the people in the sect won't be stable." Yang Shuyong was shocked. He nodded his head and said, "Thank you for reminding me, Jinren Rong." He cursed in his heart. If Zhang Yan directly destroyed Elder Jinling's primordial spirit, it would save him a lot of trouble. However, Elder Jinling was still the great guardian of the sect. If he knew that his primordial spirit was still there, but he still ignored it, other than a few of his trusted subordinates, there wouldn't be many who would be willing to help. Rong Juanzhong looked behind him and said, "Chief, Jinling Guardian is a founding member of the previous generation. Even if Zhong Tai's request is a little harsh, there's no harm in agreeing to it. As long as we win the battle, we don't have to worry about not getting it back."